Cool. Thinking about it.
I don't see it. I got my window here.
Okay, well, I see it. Cool. I think I'm live. I think we're live. I think I've done this enough times. Cool. There's the video. All right. Hey, welcome to Talking Heads, everyone. Episode 380, your once-week live show for the latest in beer and tech news. I'm Jeff, and tonight I'm joined by a special guest. Allyn, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Allyn Malventano, mostly remembered from PC perspective, I guess, but spent the past few years doing a bunch of stuff on the dark side, just making the SSDs faster.
Yeah, he used to be on. Yeah, he used to be on our side of the things. Now he works for the companies that we have to talk
listen,
about.
I'm still on everybody's side.
Anyway, thank you for joining us tonight. If you've never seen the show before, we talk beer, we talk tech, we talk games, pop culture, entertainment, sometimes some Star Trek, if you couldn't notice from the decor. All super chats are read online or read out loud, so long as they will not permanently demonetize the channel. But an even better way to help support the show is to head on over to craftcomputing.store, get some of our exclusive merch. We've got beer glasses and coasters, whiskey stones, coffee tumblers, a whole bunch of fun stuff. All of it made and designed right here in-house. Also, if you want to join the super secret chat and the even more super secret after party, think about joining the Patreon. Link is down in the video description. As a bonus, you'll get exclusive access to my Discord server, where you can chat with myself, as well as the other hosts from Talking Heads, and join the awesome community that hangs out over there. What are you getting from your shelf?
I have an appropriate trinket.
Oh boy.
So, people that spend some time in the Navy, like, sometimes they do this thing where they sort of exchange coins.
Yeah. Okay,
right?
yeah.
And I don't get too crazy. Like some people that like they'll have like a whole shelf full, it'll just be like ridiculous. I only have very few, but of the few that I do have.
Oh, there you go. Very nice.
This is like an impossible.
That's pretty
find
cool.
From the USS Enterprise.
I like that.
Yeah, it's
like
freaking heavy too.
It looks like it. No, I have one of my best friends is a Navy brat kid, so yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Anyway, we've got a good show for you all tonight. We've got a couple loose items on the list. ASUS is getting into the sensor game, much like myself, but including sensors that I think no one asked for. ReactOS is going back in time to support the Voodoo 5, which is really cool, and I know some people who are extraordinarily excited about that. We all know that the "you wouldn't steal a car" adverts didn't really curb piracy. In fact, they let people know that piracy was possible, but there's a new twist in the story that we will get to. And the Wii homebrew channel is dead, and that's another story with some twists and turns. Those are kind of the palate cleansers, the appetizers, as you will. But this being the show, we like to meander as we go through. So, have your questions ready. We can
where's the beer part of the show?
The beer part is literally right now. That's how we start the show. So,
we're doing an experiment.
Ooh, we're doing an experiment. I like experiments.
Yeah.
What do you got? What do we got?
It's just a Virgil's cane sugar root beer.
Okay.
However,
I've had the Virgil's root beer. It's good stuff.
Since I live in Boone County.
Oh, there you go. Little bourbon cream to the mix.
Yes, this is the appropriate. And for those followers of PC Perspective Podcast, this is the Josh Walrus mug.
Nice.
As is appropriate.
Nice.
Yes. All right, let's see what happens with this concoction.
I'm kind of curious myself. I don't know if I've ever done the root beer and bourbon cream before. I think
I've
done cream soda, but
this might go really good or really bad. I mean, it is mixing and not turning into cottage cheese on you.
Yeah, you're not getting chunks on top right away, so that's always a good sign.
No chunks. Oh yeah, that'll work.
Nice. For myself, I have a beer that was sent over from a longtime fan of the channel, American Cosworth, in the chat. This is from Stoop Brewing. It is the Other Side of the Pillow IPA, 7.1%. Again, you're in Kentucky. I'm in the Northwest. We drink IPAs.
Mm-hmm.
7.1%.
Okay, there's a few of them. There's a few of them over here. They just don't go as crazy. They're sort of outmaneuvered by all the bourbon related distilleries.
Yep. And of course, in my Code Rain craft computing glass.
I need to go shopping.
Need to get you some glassware, definitely.
Yeah. I need to go shopping. I was like, I don't have an appropriate glass to do a pour, but like I was just like, well, I got the PC Per mug.
Craftcomputing.store. So I don't know if you've seen some of my merch. I laser etch all of my glassware in house. So we've got 2 different types of pint glasses. And they are nucleated on the bottom, so if you drink beer, it gives the carbonation a place to bubble up, refreshes your head while you drink.
How the heck are you getting the laser to go that far?
I have a Galvo CO2 laser. So the focus distance on it is 180 mil, something like that. And I've got 2 different lenses. I've also got a further one, so I can be even further away for taller glassware. But the focal distance on it is 180, almost 200 mil, I want to say. Oh no, the main lens that I use, it's got a focal distance of 228 millimeter. That's right. So the laser is 228 mils above the cutting surface. So yeah, I've got a video up on my Patreon of like me designing one thing that I was thinking about doing for merch. But I really need to do a video just solely on the fun that I have out in my garage, because I have 2 different Galvo lasers. I've got a CO2 and I've got a 30-watt fiber.
Wait a minute. Are we literally recording at the same time as the PC Per podcast?
Oh, I don't know.
I had
That'd be hilarious.
Somebody in the chat was like, I guess I'll skip PC Per tonight. Okay, well, if that's the case, sorry, guys.
I'm stealing more than Wendell's.
Oh, Jesus, you just stole. I'm literally, like, wearing the shirt. I'm just drinking from the mug.
That's hilarious.
We're just stepping on them. Oh, crap. Okay.
Sorry. Oh, you are
in an hour. They start in an hour.
Okay. Okay. So we will be going up against them. Yes.
We will. Oh man. Maybe like we need to figure out how to do like the old school TV shows where you used to have like the, like the stars from the one like Happy Days would show up on like, something else.
Yeah. All of a sudden, Fonz just walks into the next set.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like Mork and Mindy.
Mork and Mindy walks. That's exactly what I was going to say.
Technically, that wasn't a crossover. That was what started Mork and Mindy. Was
yeah.
Robin Williams just walking on. Yeah. But you catch my drift. Like that's we need more of that.
I've done that with Wendell before, where
yeah, we're all members of the basement storage rack interdimensional portal.
Exactly.
Network.
Yeah. You can teleport through telecom racks. Exactly.
Yes, exactly. I tried to do that for one of the intro videos with Wendell, where I gave him B-roll where I walk into the behind the rack. We should have done. I should have done another B-roll when I was down there and walking out of his, but Oh, well.
That'd be pretty cool. I did do a bit one time in one of my videos. It was right after Wendell did the initial video with GN where he teleported into his rack. And I went, well, that's really fun. Well, Wendell sent me over an Epic Rome processor. And I said, I'm still working on my full pad, but I have my mini rack that I think I can still receive transmissions on. And so I had a little Raspberry Pi rack where I beamed in the processor onto.
That's awesome. It's a little mini. It's like toaster.
Mm-hmm.
You just send your little experiment, sort of failing.
Uh-oh.
It's turning into. It's getting a little
chunky.
It's getting a little chunky on top.
Yep.
It's still yummy, but
oh, of course. Anyway, my chat likes to drink as well. So let's
what's in the chat? We'll
give a couple of those shout outs. Gabrielle's drinking a Molotov cocktail by Evil Twin Brewing. 12%. Good Lord. 3.87 on
that's up there.
Untapped. Wasn't hot enough, so I added some homemade lacto-fermented habanero hot sauce. So he took the Molotov cocktail and he spiked it.
Made it hotter.
Oh my gosh. Let's see. Harley's, being Illinois adjacent, got a Yuengling traditional lager tonight. Excellent stuff. Novella's got a Bellflower Mortalis Brewing. Anthea's Ascent Double IPA, 8%. That's out of Portland, Maine. The other Portland. Let's see. And Novella's also drinking out of the Code Rain mug tonight. Let's see. Coffee and Cynicism's got a KBS Maple Kentucky. The Kentucky Breakfast Stout. If you've ever had one of those are absolutely fantastic from Founders. Rev is cracking into a mojito apple cider with lime, mint, and jalapeno from One Tree Cider out of Spokane, Washington. 5.2%. Outdorp is a Two-Town Cider, Pacific Pineapple. That's one of my favorite ciders. They're actually local here out of Bend, Oregon. They are absolutely fantastic. Jeff Swirls Beer, Guest Swirls Coffee. And the 1KEA has a quick question about OpenViro. Do remote sensors work with twisted pair cables with RJ11? They are a 6P 6C connector. We do use all 6 of the pins. One of them is voltage, 2 of them are data, and 3 of them are grounds. They are not the twisted pair. They are the 6P 6C data, but straight cables.
If the bandwidth is low enough, you don't need the twist.
So I guess you could twist them, but the twisting does no good in my case. We're running at, I don't even think it's 9600 baud out to the. I think we might be 2400 baud out to the sensors.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of what we settled on, and we were trying to maximize distance on the cables, and I went, screw it, just run it at its lowest speed and let what happens. And he goes, okay, cool. And
2400 can go so far on non-twisted.
Exactly. So, I believe we're shipping with either 6 or 7 foot cables for the sensors. We might also include a little dongle sensor cable if you want to run right on the front of your rack. That's how I run mine over here, and also my test unit out in my garage. By the way, we also got in our latest revision of our sensor boards, and you might notice it's a little bit shorter than it used to be. So this is the permanent form factor that I've been waiting to get in and test, and the test today went fantastic. So as soon as we get these validated, we'll have an update on the website, and we'll start showing them off a little closer. So, anyway, cool. Well, what do you say we talk about ASUS and their latest sensor platform?
Okay, if we have to.
ASUS is building in a gyro and accelerometer to their graphics cards to tell you whether or not they're level and whether or not you need to buy an anti-sag bracket.
This is in case you didn't have eyes.
Also, yes.
I guess. Or also, what if your case is not perfectly level? What if you've nailed the GPU, it's like perfectly, and then just the case for whatever, even for design purposes, is like on an angle or something.
Right.
Right?
Those old Thermaltake attack helicopter cases that are at 45 degrees or 30
or what
degrees, I think some of them
What if you just propped something under the front just so it's under your desk and you just tilted it a little bit towards you or something, and then now you have like a pop-up saying, you really should get our bracket.
Yeah.
But here's what bugs me the most about that. Well, I mean, what are they doing? Are they piggybacking on the I2C bus just to try to
Probably. Yeah.
I hope that also you're just adding to the bill of materials cost of
someone
a thing
had to
that's
develop
already. But but it's already those GPUs are already so dang expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Yeah, you're gonna just, it's almost like a here's in your face. There's this $4,000 5090 or whatever, but here's a sensor you probably didn't care to have, but
Yeah,
it's here
here's
anyway.
another $3 or $4 in parts plus we had to pay the developer. What was that? 2 engineers a month and a half to make sure they implemented it properly and passed all their checks and integrated into the rest of the board and schematics and everything. Like,
and it's
that's not inexpensive.
I hope it doesn't do this, but all I'm thinking of is just one more device that you have to try to find the driver for after your reinstall.
Oh Lord.
Right?
This is not
going to be like...
You're correct. This is not going to be an NVIDIA standard driver installer for this. This is going to be part
Right.
of ASUS's own driver suite.
Yeah, so you're just going to have a question mark thing in Device Manager, and you're like, what the heck is that? And you're going to go Googling for the device ID and stuff and try to figure out, okay, what
the hell is this serial device
what is
that's
this?
on the PCIe bus?
Yeah, and ASUS doesn't have the greatest track record with like their other sort of add-on software. Like, I'm pretty sure I got something nasty on my system once just from like the motherboard, whatever the ASUS,
Yep.
it wasn't Armor Crate, but it was some other thing.
Yeah, there have been a couple of vulnerabilities and a couple exploits that have made it into the wild through their update system, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Like I was doing the installer, and then I saw like, the ripple of command prompts just run down the screen diagonal real fast and all disappear, and I was like, okay, time to fire up Malwarebytes and 5 other things. All right now, do not pass go. It's what the heck's going on? And I found some stuff, and I was pretty sure I was clean before that. And I was like, okay.
Yeah. I will say, to play devil's advocate, I can see one circumstance where this would genuinely be a useful feature, or potentially a useful feature. And that is on the cards that are shipping with liquid metal. Because if you have... Now, it would need to be more than the 5 degrees off that a PCIe card could possibly sag at.
You should be able to have... The surface tension should be enough. You should be able to have those vertical.
And it should be enough.
Yeah. Because plenty of people with liquid metal on their GPUs have like even the ribbon into like the vertical setup
even the vertical
in front of their
ones,
window.
right.
Yeah, and they're not like dripping unless it was factory installed liquid metal,
and this is some of their cards are factory liquid metal.
All bets are off. I would hope that they're being very sparing, like given that it costs them more money if they go nuts with that compared to just regular thermal paste, like is the usual overdoing of GPU thermal paste that happens.
I really want us to finally stop using the 6-cent thermal paste on everything. And so many people, so many industries need to go to a PTM 7950 or phase change or at least spend 10 cents on the thermal paste instead of 6.
At least get something thermal grizzly, like for crying out loud.
Right.
Even if it's regular paste, don't just get the cheap stuff.
Right, exactly. And I understand that is a manufacturing step that they would need to fully flesh out the process for. But that is such a critical component in modern day. Like back in the day when, CPUs were 60 watts and GPUs might have been 100. You could put whatever thermal paste on there and that thermal paste would last for the life of the card. Anymore, 600 watts in a 5090 and you're thermal cycling that how many tens of times per day and thousands of times over the course of a year. Thermal paste breaks down, especially the cheap stuff. And so going with some kind of phase change pad or liquid metal or thermal grizzly or something that's designed to heat cycle that much, that is such a higher value add to the end consumer than engineering a gyroscope to put onto your graphics card so you can tell if it's perfectly level or not.
So speaking of phase change, Vast VNC in the chat a few minutes ago goes, new Optane when? He must know my history. Listen,
your reputation precedes yourself.
I feel your pain, brother.
Yeah.
I really feel your pain. That technology was simultaneously too early and too late at the same time.
Yeah.
Right? If it came out today, with all this AI crap that really needs to beat the tar out of storage and just beat the crap out of everything and just
Yeah.
like, oh my goodness, right? It would be great. Or if it came out 20 years ago, early enough to actually get integration into like systems designed around the capabilities of it, that would have been great too.
Yep.
Came out in the little Goldilocks spot in the middle.
Yep.
It's just
Yeah.
really bad. But I have a bonus though.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Hopefully I don't break it in the process of trying to show it.
Yeah, I fully agree with you that Optane came out at just the wrong time. Because it was at that stagnation point of storage bandwidth where we were starting to press up against PCIe 3.0 and latency was starting to suffer on the PCIe bus.
This
now
is
we can
really not going to show up on camera very well. But
nice.
This is Optane.
That is cool. That is super
took some
cool.
doing. It took some doing to
I
get
imagine it did to get a full wafer. Oh my gosh.
Well, but here's the thing. I asked for it near the end.
Uh-huh.
It got surprisingly easy. The hard part was finding the right person.
Okay, yeah.
They were like, oh yeah, you want one? You want two? It's like, what? And then they sent, and then I got it, and I emailed them back because when you get them from the fab, sometimes it's like they're defect wafers, or they're the ones that are giveaways are the ones that obviously you're not gonna use, right?
Right.
And so I asked, I was like, hey, just like this looks pretty complete because I knew the last few layers were copper layers.
Yeah.
And it has a copper sheen to it, and I was like, did you send me a what is this? Which is the defect or what? And they're like, oh no, that's full. That's like ready to slice.
Oh my gosh.
So they just pulled it out of the production pool because they were just sitting on all sorts of it. That's why I stopped selling it, because it wasn't selling.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah,
so pretty funny.
I've played with some Optane. I've got a couple 500 gig Optane DIMMs. Those were kind of fun to toy around with.
Did you get them like about 6 months ago when somebody was blowing them out on eBay for $22 a stick?
I didn't see that. Otherwise, I would have bought a couple more. Oh my gosh!
I bought 2 trays.
Jeez. Okay.
And I already had listen. I worked at Intel. I was testing this stuff. I already had some.
Yeah.
And I was like, $22.
Yeah.
Each.
Yeah.
Those like if you were to buy them for like a VMware config or whatever from Supermicro, or like on a specking out a system, those were like $3K each.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just yeah.
I bought some. Optane was not yet discontinued, and it's a PMEM 2 stick. I have 2 of the 500 gig ones. I paid $500 a piece. I paid $1,000 for my 2 sticks.
More show and tell. Well, I got the level 1 text mug.
There you
Should have
go.
been using that.
Yeah.
Gotta represent Wendell, since you stole me from Wendell. Star Citizen Optanes?
Oh, jeez.
That may or may not still have the codes in the box.
That's funny.
And if anybody's listening, no, don't email me. I'm not giving you the code.
And one day you'll be able to redeem them for an actual game.
No, I redeemed one of them.
Okay.
It's in the game. Like I can play the game, and it's actually a really badass ship that you get. It's the Optane specific ship. It's actually pretty cool.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's just they just need to finish the dang game already, because it's been in development since. I mean, heck, when that drive came out, when the heck was that? Like, what year was that? 905p. Let's
16?
see.
17 maybe?
16 might be. It might be before 16.
Might be before 16. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gosh.
Actually, this is the ship. Do you know who Fugger is?
I don't think I do.
Overclocking guy.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
He 3D printed really
nice.
fancy Saber Ravens, which is the Optane ship.
Oh, that's cool.
And he passed me one of them.
Nice.
So these were like made as a part of the whole like PR thing or whatever back in the
Yeah.
day. And I was like, dude, he's like, oh yeah, you did all that Optane stuff. And I was like, he lives in Vegas, and I was at CES, and he was like, I'll come see you tomorrow. And he
Oh,
just
nice.
brought this. This was on the shelf right next to the Enterprise, by the way. So
Nice.
as is appropriate.
David in chat wants to know, how would you like to double your money on that $22 per stick purchase?
I don't want to sell them yet. Like, I haven't even used them. But the reason I got them is because I know that I will plug them into something at some point someday.
Yeah.
But it has to be Ice Lake.
Yeah.
It's in the middle. It's that specific gen, Ice Lake Xeons.
Yep. I've got a 5218N out in my garage, and that's the board that I use my Optane DIMMs on.
Yeah. Sapphire Rapids literally had a revision. Like, they revved out the support for what was going to be the third gen Optane DIMMs,
Yep.
which were canceled.
Yep.
And it was supposedly gonna be somehow like backwards compatible if it was like a DDR4,
Yep.
if it was a board that could do DDR4, there was something where they were just trying to make it so that it could work, and then all that when they put the kibosh on Optane, all that kind of stuff evaporated.
Yeah.
And somewhere I have like a literal document about the platform, like the testing platform, that got a revision, and in the change notes it literally said, it's like you could just feel the pain in this one line.
Yeah.
Yeah, PMEM,
support. Yeah.
Removed support for, it was like Barlow Pass was the blue ones that were for, and then I forget what
that was the Cascade based ones. And then the PMEM
Apache Pass was Cascade Lake.
Yeah.
Barlow Pass was Ice Lake, and then there was whatever the new one was, which I forgot what the code name was.
Yeah.
Supposed to be, but yeah, just
Yep.
it just went away.
Yep.
Yeah. Sorry, David.
There are so many use cases in which Optane is so incredibly useful, and especially like you said today, hammering with AI workloads and training and things like that.
Yeah. The catch with the PMEM, though, because I did a lot of performance testing for that,
mm-hmm.
and the catch with that is if you had something that was beating up the DRAM a lot, right?
Yeah.
And you also wanted to try to use the PMEM at the same time, you would get a performance hit, depending on the workload, plus or minus, but the performance hit would be akin to if you were trying to have a workload spread across two sockets.
Right.
So, going across UPI or QPI bus with a whole bunch of bandwidth and everything, usually that's like a 20 to 30% performance hit.
Mm-hmm.
And the PMEM mixed with heavy DRAM usage was the same sort of performance hit. It was like 20 to 30% of a hit, which just doesn't make any sense for this. At that point, you might because think of, you're spending that much on the platform and the compute and everything else. You don't want to just throw away 30% of the performance.
Right.
It just didn't make sense.
Yep. And like I said, these days we can just, brute force the PCIe bus and go, we can get the same speeds and latency, cool. And everyone's kind of happy with it.
There were workloads where I was testing the PMEM versus just a round of P5800Xs,
mm-hmm.
just PCI connected. And that would walk all over the PMEM config, even though the PMEM was way faster on paper.
Yeah.
It's just that you had to give up DRAM bandwidth when you were using it, so it just made more sense to be using a completely separate bus.
Yeah.
If you were trying to offload to storage and have DRAM and storage at the same time.
Yeah.
Right. And the PHY, the actual thing juggling, like if it was in shared memory mode,
mm-hmm.
where the CPU took care of, it just presented one huge memory pool.
Yeah.
Right. And the CPU took care of like putting what in the DRAM and what in the PMEM and when. There wasn't enough intelligence there for it to be aware. Like there was no control. You couldn't manually control that.
Yep.
So if you try to throw an AI workload or something like that at it, and it just overflowed how much DRAM you had, then almost everything was a cache miss because nothing was informed. It was always looking for something that wasn't in the DRAM, and it would constantly be just swapping.
Yep.
So
I did some basic testing, like I said, on my rig, Ice Lake, and it was basically a TrueNAS server, and I used it for basically ZFS cache. And so I had a terabyte of cache, and for that particular use case, it was absolutely insane. Because the first terabyte you read out of ZFS would drop into the memory, and then you have essentially zero latency access to whatever you're trying to do.
Yeah.
But
and you wouldn't necessarily be hitting DRAM very hard at the same time that you were hitting that
exactly.
PMEM volume.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that would have been great. I mean, the designed use case for that was mostly for VMware type virtualization type applications, where you had a rack full of servers. They were all trying to serve out a bunch of VMs, and and this was before. I mean, VMware is a little smarter about this now, where it only allocates as much memory as it needs to, even if the host, like the virtualized host, has, say, 32 gig allocated, but it won't actually just consume all 32 gig.
Yeah, it won't actually capture it and reserve it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But back in the day, it did, and you'd had a bunch of systems. You could have 100 copies of basically the same base level info for just Windows running.
Right.
All in the system, and most of that data was stale. It wasn't even hot data.
Yeah.
Right. So the idea was you can just have a bunch of virtualized hosts running on a server with, if only like 10 to 20% of your memory pool was actually hot active data, then you could just offload all the rest of it to the Optane, and you wouldn't have that many cache misses, and everything would be fine.
Yeah.
Right. And for that use case, great.
Yep.
It's just that anytime you did anything, you couldn't venture too far out of that box, other than your ZFS case there, where it just didn't make any sense anywhere else. And so if it's like a one-trick pony, then
it made sense for me on my the majority of my storage was spinning Rust. I did have one NVMe pool, but the Optane was still lower latency, and me as a video editor, that was huge, and being able to scrub timelines and things like that, that random, hey, I need this bit of data now. That was game changing on running Optane as a cache disk for that. But it only made sense for me in my 2-man team with my storage configuration. like it was very, very niche.
Yeah, no, but hey, I mean, it would honestly, even my setup could probably benefit from that. It's just that I just don't. I mean, I'm using a Xeon now for my current Homelabs / NAS all the things, serve all the things for the house kind of deal. I actually switched. I was on a Cascade Lake box for the longest time, which I don't know if you have that picture handy, but I had a single Cascade Lake 2U box just serving.
I was literally
3
scrolling
racks.
up so I can grab your rack real quick.
Just 3 racks full of disks were all hanging off of this single 2U, and it was a trooper, right? I ran that Cascade Lake box for probably 5 or 6 years. And I just finally, like a year and a half ago, switched it over to Sapphire Rapids Xeon, just a Xeon workstation, single socket.
Yeah, there it is.
There was that picture, and then I think I have an open, like the new build of the server. I had a picture of that a little bit later on. But yeah, there's just a few bays down there. Most of it's doing Chia. Just because crazy storage people naturally migrate to a thing like Chia, and I might have went a little bit overboard with, looking for tax write-offs.
Gotta spend it on something, right?
I was like, hey, I could get this, and this is just a legitimate business expense because it's being used for Chia, directly? Oh, okay.
Right. All right. So there's a joke in my community of people who run a humble home lab. And it's the crowd, it's not much, but it's mine, right?
Yes.
So
this is mine.
So here is Allyn's humble home lab.
Sorry. Listen, no part of this build was ever meant to be like an in-your-face sort of thing. It was honestly like, oh, you're selling 24 or dang it.
I have your hard drive picture too, by the way.
Oh yeah, of course. Those were offloaded disks. Those were me selling them back to the reseller so I can upgrade to bigger drives. That freezer was not happy.
I also use my chest freezer as a
desk. It's a home lab desk.
As a desk, as a staging area for my rack mount stuff.
Oh, dude, the whole surface of that thing just has like a sheen of aluminum rubbing, embedded in it from just being painted on with like various server rack trays just sitting on it and slid around. And
mine is full of black scuff marks from all the servers sliding across it. I also use it as a spray paint table occasionally. I'll set up a fan with a filter and then I'll spray paint on top of it.
Jesus, you're really abusing that freezer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so that's it has transformed a little since then. All those disk shelves are now out of there. I've added some more of those Dell MD 3060s that were in the middle rack because I kept coming, like, again, it was never about showing off. It was more about like, this guy has a killer deal on these. If I have to do freight shipping anyway,
right?
Like, if I'm going to pay for the freight shipping, I might as well just buy him out of stock.
Yeah, if I got to buy the $1,000 pallet, I might as well spend the $20 per chassis and just ship them all.
Yeah, like,
exactly.
Yeah, at one point I got those MD 3060Es for like $300 each or something.
Yeah.
And that's a 4U that holds 60 drives.
Right.
And so I was just like, oh, okay. You know,
Cool.
and then the guy, you know, I messaged him and I was like, how many can you load onto a pallet there? And, you know, and he's like, well, if you clean it out, I'll do like 200 each. I was like, oh, really? Buy two, get one free of the already ridiculously low for. Okay.
There you go. Okay.
All right. Yeah. So, but now that means that I have 2 stacks out of the server.
Yeah.
Of those disk shelves, like 16 disk shelves that I just need to figure out where to go. I'm probably just gonna bring. I told Wendell, like, hey, you need any of these? And he's like, I'm kind of good, but like.
Yeah, I'm kind of good for 3.5-inch shelves. I am actually on this coming Sunday. A friend of mine is dropping off a pair of 24 by 2.5-inch disc shelves. I have 2 of those. Those are good. I see them there at the top. Yeah.
They're not in the server anymore. I pulled them.
Okay.
Now everything is on the 3060s. Even if I have 2.5-inch drives, I just sprinkle them across all the trays.
Yeah.
Like I treat it more as like a vertical because I'm trying to get higher bandwidth for a given pool out of it. So I have like my main Z pool that's just like media and just like the typical NAS kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's like 2 drives per tray all the way down.
Okay.
So for those keeping track though, and I actually have a 9th 3060 where those 2 2Us used to be and the server's now off to the side.
Yeah.
So that means that there's 45 times 2, so it's a 90 disk, and I'm a huge fan of single VDEV RAID Z3s.
Okay.
So I have a 90 wide
90 wide Z3
RAID Z3 of 22 terabyte drives.
Oh my god.
with 4 SAS SSDs as the metadata and the small blocks offload. And that's just a straight mirror.
That's incredible.
Right? Just 4 drives because there's so much stuff in the pool. I want crazy 4-way redundancy on the metadata because if the metadata goes away, then all the other stuff's gone.
For those keeping track, that is a 1.9 terabyte or petabyte. 1.9 petabyte
single VDEV
Z3 pool.
Single
VDEV
Z3 pool. And because it's spread across 3 of those 4Us. Jeff's just losing it over there.
I am. I'm going to need a minute. Hold on.
He's just got to collect himself. So I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to go crazy wide on the pool, let's see how much bandwidth I can get out of this thing. So I have 3 of those 4-way SAS HBAs in the server now. And I'm using 3 channels per card out of those. That's where there's only 2 in there at the time when I took that picture.
Yeah.
Of course, there's a couple of Optane drives.
Yeah, a couple of Optanes right there. You got to cache it, right?
It's a requirement. Yes, it's just, because of course. So I had 3 of those 4-way LSI cards, and I'm using 3 ports per card. Each one. So every 4U has its own port dedicated.
Okay.
And it's spread evenly across the 3 cards.
Yeah.
So when I do a scrub, or if I need to rebuild. If I need to do anything, any of those operations, it runs at like 12 to 13 gigabytes a second on the pool. Yeah, single VDEV.
Yeah, that's insane.
So that whole point about like, oh, you need multiple VDEVs for performance and for if it's like a NAS, just a regular ass NAS.
Yeah.
Right. You're fine.
Yeah.
Like, and especially if you have the small blocks on SSDs anyway. then you're not even worried about the high IOPS stuff,
Mhm.
right? I mean, I think my cutoff was like 256K block size.
Okay.
So anything 256K and smaller goes to the NAND anyway.
Yeah.
And that's that's just a four-way mirror, which isn't going to write super fast. But as far as reads, it's spreading across 4 SAS SSDs.
Right.
So it's plenty fast.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. See me. Mine is a little more humble. I'm in a single rack, and I've got 2 servers. I've got 2 NAS servers. I've got 2 essentially AV15 storinators.
Yeah.
And I run 12 drive Z2s, single pool. So I've got one as a primary and one as a backup.
Yep. Are you doing like the like 1 meg or 16 meg like max, max block size or any of that stuff? Max record size?
I think it's 1 meg max block. I think is how I configured it.
I think they upped the default to 1 meg if I remember right.
Yeah, I believe so.
Well, not the default. They upped the default maximum. You used to have to do like a command line or like a ZFS options to go from 1 to 16 meg before you can even create a pool at 16 meg. Now I think that's just built in.
Yeah.
But the default pool max record size I think is even to this day is 128K. I don't think they upped it to 1 meg yet.
Yeah.
And I kind of wish they would up it, but I understand why they wouldn't, because you're going to have somebody who doesn't think about it and tries to run a database server off of it, and if it's 1 meg record size, it's just going to fall on its butt.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I do like 16 meg record size to the whole thing, and anything like 256K and smaller is on SSDs anyway. So the hard drives are really, who cares that the stripe is not perfectly aligned to 90 wide or 87 wide, technically, data disks.
Yeah.
Right? Because, like my smallest sector size or block size that's going to even go to the spinning disks is already doing multiple laps of that VDEV.
Yeah.
Just to store the 1 block, right? So who cares about the extra little bit of, slack space that shows up?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I got to look at let's see.
What's the power usage? Someone wants to know. I did see that question.
Oh, let's see. There's currently, it's usually around, I have 4 20 amp circuits going down there currently. I used to have 3, but so now I have 4 APC UPSs. I have those like
120 or 240?
No, it's all 240.
All 240, okay. Nice.
But they are, I have those 3000 kVA, APC 4U rack mount UPSs. You can see them in the bottom of the picture. There was 3 of them installed when I took that picture. I added a 4th just because the, craziness.
Yeah, as one does.
I was running too close on the 3. So you could probably consider I'm basically maxing 3 3000 kVA APC UPSs. They were all running at like 85 to 90% when I just had the 3.
Okay.
Yeah. So I just had to. That's why I was like, okay, need a 4th.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do intend to start scaling this back considerably as eventually the Chia thing is no longer worth doing.
Right.
But at least for the moment, I don't have to worry of running out of room. It's just
right.
Actually, like half of that 2 petabyte pool is just overflow Chia. I just filled all the extra space, and I just have a script running that keeps a couple of terabytes free.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have a custom Samba script for calculating the free space. So that volume shows up with the correct amount of free space, like on the Windows boxes, because it automatically subtracts out the Chia pool.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. And so as far as any of the hosts on the network go, it's completely transparent. It's just that the half of that pool happens to be making like probably $10 a day or something.
Yeah.
Just for free, because it's got to run anyway. So let it slowly try to pay for itself, right? Or at least cover the power.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why, like, anybody can do that. You don't have to go crazy with something like Chia to use it to offset your power.
Yeah.
For your home lab, as long as you've overbuilt your storage enough for it to make sense to fill that extra space with a thing that could potentially make you something, right?
So your home lab is pretty cool. I will say. I don't think your home lab can do this though. Hold on.
Uh-oh, here we go. Oh crap. All right. Now I need to add. It's a good thing I unloaded all those NetApp disk shelves,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
now I have room.
If you've got 4U free, there's no better use.
I do have 4U free, but I don't just have like an extra storinator box just lying around.
That is not a storinator. That is a beerinator. That is an official...
You made it look like a...
That is an official product on the 45 Lab or 45 Homelabs store.
Oh my God.
45homelab.com. It's $1,500. It's not cheap.
Okay, that's a little spendy.
It's a little spendy.
Beerinator.
Yes. It's not cheap. But come on.
Yeah. Hold on. Somebody earlier in the chat, who knew I was a crippy? Somebody knew I was in cryptography in the Navy, which means they must have really like followed what I did for a while. Let's see. I'd like to see Allyn build a max tier storage project going from level 1, 2, 3 cache down to tapes, slotting in every tier of storage possible. Give us SSD caches, Crosspoint, Gen 543, NVMe, SATA, etc. Honestly, almost every single one of those is in that rack except for tapes already. I do have, not in that picture because it was hiding behind the rack, I have a 5-bay IO safe. So it's basically a Synology NAS wrapped in a fireproof box.
Okay, yeah.
Right. And I totally don't use any of the Synology stuff because I'm a ZFS junkie. So I literally just made each drive into a single drive iSCSI volume. So this poor Synology NAS, and it didn't even have like 10 gig. It was like the original OG IO safe. So it's only like four
1 gig ports, I think is what it had.
4 1 gig ports on the back.
Yeah.
So when I go to do a backup, I literally, and I'm doing multipath because of course. So I multipath mount a Z pool of which's volumes are all iSCSI mounted to the server individually, just so I can get away with having a Z pool.
Yeah.
on the thing that does not work with the Z pool, and it's too much of a pain in the butt to try to roll your own OS on that thing, and yeah, it's just too many blockers, right? So I was like, fine, I will work with what I have. I will just, and it happily maxes out.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm sending parity data across the network, and so I'm losing 1/5 of a drive, worth of bandwidth. But who cares? Like, whatever. It's just, I'm just doing ZFS send and receive anyway. I'm only sending deltas across the network to the drive, across the iSCSI. So, yeah. Navy. Navy is weird. What's weird about the Navy is kind of weird.
So
I got Navy trinkets on the shelf. I don't know what the chat's talking about the Navy for.
So I told you this is an official project.
Yeah.
There you go. This is the official product. It's the beerinator. It's on the 45 Homelabs store.
What is $275? Oh, just a custom front?
That's if you want it. They'll put whatever you want on the grill.
How? Please explain. What is this? Just you? Is this when you all went out there and somehow while you were there you talked them into this?
Yes, actually, kinda.
Oh my goodness.
They've done the Creator Summit. They've done it 2 years in a row now. I've been an invited creator for both times. The first year that we went out there, part of it was they want us as creators and people in the industry to give talks to their engineers and their staff about things that we see and trends that we see. And a couple years ago, it was on Homelabs stuff. And what is the trend of Homelabs and things like that. And that was the year they introduced the HL15, which is their basically AV45, but built more for Homelab.
Right.
And I gave a talk and said, I think you guys asked the wrong people what a Homelab is, because look, there's the 5% of people like me and like you whose garages look like that.
Yeah.
who have the full racks and the petabyte of storage and everything else. It's like, that's great, but they were probably going to buy your hardware anyway. But at the same time, they're also looking as cheap as possible. They're looking eBay for used deals on 20-year-old disc shelves, and that's what they're going to make work. The real
So spend $1,500 on a fridge.
Right. Well, no, what I did was I said,
So
you've already engineered some backplanes, and what people really want is a little desktop unit that they can run some VMs on and put 4 to 8 hard drives in, and be very quiet but very well built. So I basically like engineered most of it for them and said, here's what you build. You take these parts that you've already manufactured, you cut them in half, you put it in this chassis, and you sell that. And a year later,
that I saw when that came out. I saw that.
Yeah, so that was my inspiration going into that, and some back and forth throughout the year to build the HL8. Also the first year I was there, they told one of the engineers let slip that years ago they had what they called a beerinator, and they built it for a company party. And what it was they took one of their extra chassis, they welded it shut, filled it with ice, and stuck some beers in there for a company party.
Okay.
And I said,
but no insulation and not fancy.
No insulation, no anything. Like it was literally just like hey, here, have some beer. I said, you could probably put a mini fridge in that. Like I bet there's enough room. You could make that work. And they're like, you're probably right. And tell you what, we're gonna go ahead and we'll build you a beerinator. We'll figure something out. And they promised me that back in 2023. The 2024 Creator Summit comes around, and I'm walking around with 45 Drive's owner Doug, fantastic guy. But I leaned into him at one point and I said, you never got me my beerinator. And he goes, what? They didn't. What? He literally took out his phone and went,
yeah, where's that beerinator that was supposed to go to Jeff?
We'll get back to you. And that was like the boss, like, who was supposed to get Jeff the beerinator? Where's the goddamn beerinator?
Yeah, why didn't Jeff get his beerinator? Why didn't Jeff get his beerinator? You had one job. That's the place where it was supposed to go.
So that was on Monday afternoon. I had that conversation with him. Wednesday afternoon, they wheeled in the beerinator. They tore apart a mini fridge and they built me a beerinator.
Oh my goodness.
Now I didn't get to take that one home.
Now, what does the power plug look like in the back? Is it a C13?
This one's actually integrated. I think the one that they're selling on the store is a C13.
Okay. Because it's there's requirements here.
Right.
It has to be able to run, ideally even run on 220, because the rest of the rack might be.
This does run on 220. I can confirm that.
See,
yeah.
Friggin' okay. So they're checking the right boxes.
Yeah.
They're making it a little more worth the money in my mind.
Exactly. It is just a Peltier. It's not a full compressor setup. It is a 120 watt Peltier, but
if it's insulated well enough, it doesn't matter.
But it keeps the beers at like 45, and that's perfect pouring temp for almost anything. Unless you only drink like domestic lagers, in which case you want them as cold as the Rockies because you don't want to taste them. But no, like Doug literally got on his phone and sent like an angry text message and went, "We'll get you your beerinator." And sure as hell, so 3/4 of the Homelabs store are because of me.
Awesome. That doesn't surprise me. Now I will say I'm not buying one, but mainly because even the Peltier would not be happy in the average temperature around my rack in that corner of the basement.
Right.
And I don't have a rack like within camera shot for me to, there's nothing in the office here.
Yeah.
It's just a couple of desktops. So
what was funny is around December, in the corner of this corner of the office here, I actually had a mini fridge, and my mini fridge died. And I'm going, crap, what do I do? What do I put here? And in February...
And you already had it?
No, in February, I got an email that said, your beerinator is going to ship on March 18th. And I went, I'm going to buy a 27U rack. I'm just going to put...
just to put there.
And so,
yes.
I have this full of servers. There's an old Supermicro 846 chassis at the bottom that's full of 4 terabyte drives. There's an ASRock BC250 12-blade mining chassis.
Oh, Jesus.
And then there's this. None of it's powered on, just the fridge. The rest of it is ballast to keep the rack on the ground so I can slide it out.
Yes, so slide the fridge out, yes. Yeah, you just have servers as ballast.
That's exactly right.
This actually sounds, yeah, so we have a problem. We really do have a problem. And here's what's ridiculous, they make such good ballast too.
They do. What's funny is we've actually been clearing out my garage lately, and so I took a bunch of my old projects and servers and towers and things like that, and I got a storage unit, and so a bunch of my stuff's in a storage unit right now, and we had just cleared out like a good corner of my garage, and the day that this came in, I told my wife I'm heading to the storage unit, and she goes, "What are you taking there?" I said, "No, I'm actually bringing some stuff back." And she goes, "Why do you need it?" And I said, "It's just for weight. Don't worry. It's going where the mini fridge went."
It's to hold the beers down when I open the sliding. Yes. We don't want the beers to tip over. What's ridiculous, actually, I don't know if you have any of those 3060s. Dude, they are, I don't know what the actual weight is of those things empty. All I will say, it's enough that it almost breaks me moving one of them down a flight of stairs.
That's what this guy is. The very bottom server is a Supermicro 846. It is
that's a heavy box.
Yeah.
There's a lot of metal in that box.
Yeah, it's a 2008 era box is when they debuted that. Plus it's got I think it has 12 4TB drives in it right now, so it's half full. It's 3/4. It's 16. There's 16 drives in it right now.
Just doing nothing. Things powered down.
There. Yep, exactly. When I got my AV15, that was my backup server. Was just on a bunch of 4TB drives, and then I got another AV15, and that became my new backup server with just a single row of 6TB drives. And so that went to storage, but now it's that's why I just made a big vertical thing that just had a crap load of bass in it. And if I have any, I mean, yes, if it's NVMe, it can't go in there. It has to go into a server, connect somewhere else. But it's so funny that I have almost no NVMe in all of that. It's just like some boot drives. I have like a Z pool just for boot drives because I'm running Proxmox on the main. Oh yeah, we should get into that. I'm the wrong use case for Proxmox, but I'm using Proxmox. Okay, well, what do you do with Proxmox?
I just use Proxmox as a base distro with reliable support for ZFS.
Yeah, and that's
right?
kind of what I use it for as well.
Yeah, I have zero virtualization on Proxmox going on.
Okay.
I have Docker running bare metal underneath it. I know it's so backwards, right?
Okay.
But it's just because some people will be like, oh, I want to use like TrueNAS or Scale or whatever, and I'll put that and make a volume and put it in the thing, and then I'll pass my HBA through and do. No, I just none of that. Bare metal, Proxmox, pools are just mounted. Just command line, send it.
Yeah.
Do the things. Yeah. Try not to break it.
That's actually kind of the spiel that I give, because. Usually when you do tutorials on YouTube, you try to do tutorials and things you're very proficient in. And I'm very proficient in virtualization, in storage environments. Windows servers are actually a specialty of mine, or they were for years and years. Thank God it's not anymore.
Trial by fire.
Yeah. But our standard deployment when I was doing MSP type stuff is if a customer needed virtualization and a storage stack, we would deploy them a single server. It would run Proxmox. It would run TrueNAS in a VM with a pass-through HBA. And then all of their VMs could be backed up. So we'd usually run NVMe or SSDs for the VM drives themselves. But that was running on a ZFS pool, which would ZFS duplicate to the TrueNAS pool. And so you'd have duplication within your own server, and then we could also send offsite to our main backup server. And that was a solution that worked tremendously well for so many people. And so I've shown that multiple times on the channel. I always get questions about, well, why are you bothering to virtualize TrueNAS? Doesn't Proxmox run ZFS natively? Or why are you bothering to run TrueNAS inside of Proxmox? Can't TrueNAS run VMs? And the answer is, yes, technically, but they're not built to do that.
Correct.
TrueNAS,
I'm very much going behind Proxmox's back.
Right. TrueNAS is a fantastic NAS operating system. It's an immutable operating system. It is incredibly stable. But all of the things that you need to do to manage TrueNAS are inside of the GUI. And so if you need to make a change, you click to the tab that you need to go to, you make that change, you hit apply, and it's done. There's no zpool commands or manual scrubbing or any of this BS that you would have to do if you're running everything command line. Yes, Proxmox can do all of that stuff, but there's no GUI for...
Kinda, yeah.
There's no access control. There's no ACL. There's no user-defined, spaces.
Well, there can be. You just have to do it yourself.
You just have to bash it out manually.
Yeah.
Which, yes, you can, but you're stupid if you think that's repeatable.
Correct. If you're the particular kind of crazy that you're willing to, right? Like I'm one of the crazy people that does Arch installs on zpools. Right? Like for fun.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to figure it out.
Yeah.
Because that's crazy.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah, and try to run that for a few months as a desktop OS too, because why not? Right?
If I say BSD 3 times in a row, I'm gonna get one guy in my chat. So I'm gonna do BSD. He'll chime. There he is. Circuit rewind.
He just did it. Oh crap!
The latency on that was 0.
That's true. It was right as you did it. It was there. I looked down and it was already there. There was no time for him to type it. And listen, there was delay. Like, you and I are direct on the Zoom. So there was extra delay to get that out to the YouTube and back through.
Hi, Vince.
So technically you beat him.
That is tremendous timing.
And listen, yes, I have tinkered with BSD.
Yeah.
It does. I have used BSD an awful lot for like dedicated storage, like SSD testing.
Yeah.
Right. Now I will say, Debian-based things have come a long way, especially with like FIO and IOU ring and things like that, where I can get damn close to the latency of BSD, like native stuff, without any tinkering. And then if I tinker, I can sometimes beat like the BSD builds as far as latency goes, right? But really, you got to realize I'm going way in the weeds. I'm trying to get the test system as out of the way as humanly possible, because I need the performance numbers have to be of the drive with nothing interfering. That's the ideal scenario, right? It's like if you test something with a meter, the meter actually influences the circuit you're testing. You want that to be ideally to not influence it at all. Mm-hmm. And I treat a test bed the same exact way. It's like a meter.
You change the outcome by measuring it.
Correct. It's Schrodinger's SSD testing, right? Yep. And SSDs are already a nightmare, especially data center SSDs, as far as just by doing the testing, you're actually manipulating the performance of the SSD.
Yes. Because
running the test on it is changing how the SSD is behaving, because now you're doing random writes to it, and you're actually scrambling thing, and the performance will change if you run that long enough.
Yep.
Right? Any kind of SSD testing, it's just ridiculous. So you need as least number of variable headaches as possible, and you need the test system itself to just be the fastest, lowest latency possible thing. Just get out of my damn way and let me make sure all my numbers are what's actually coming out of the SSD.
Yep.
Yeah, oh my God. I've literally spent a couple of decades of my life
I've been advocating
on this problem.
I've been advocating lately to a lot of different server vendors that I want to start doing testing in production. I want to start not just take your system, run it through Cinebench and Crystal Disk and a couple other things, and go, hey, look, here's what it does.
God,
what
you're making me cringe just by saying. Just the example is painful.
I know.
But I'm sure when you talk to them, they're like, "Oh, but that's what we use."
Right.
Like,
right.
Yeah.
But it's like, Look, synthetic benchmarks are great, but would you rather see this deployed to an environment that people are actually going to use it in, and we get some realistic use cases and realistic numbers out of it? I'm not going to be able to take that exact benchmark that we deploy your system for and compare it to something else. What I want is, what scenario should we deploy this to? And let's test it in that environment and see how you did. Not against anyone else, but just see how you did. And when you have enough of those use cases, you can start to compare. You know, this one did better in this environment, but this one did better in this, and things like that. And
there's one more layer of nuance for your argument that you should add to it.
Sure.
Right? If you're using SSDs and you're running that particular workload, ideally, you want to have written at least 1.5 drives worth of that data at that type of workload. Now, you can cheat by, if you're able to tweak even your real application if you're able to remove the reads in order to try to speed up the writes and just isolate only the writes of it, if that's possible, by all means. Right? Because the SSDs at the end of the day are only really manipulated by the writes. You could read from them all day long within reason. There's some caveats there. There's a rat hole to go down. Thing called read disturb if you want to Google it for the listeners. Dude, there's so many, it's layers of complexity all the way down with these things. But you have to run the workload long enough for the drives to have hit their actual steady state. You know, because there's a thing called fresh out of the box performance, and if you had a drive that you just throw in the server, it literally is fresh out of the box. You know, it's going to be amazing for potentially days or weeks, right up until you've touched all the NAND and you've done that first loop. And it starts.
Then you got to start writing back, reshuffling.
Now you got to start playing musical chairs. Like as the stuff's coming in, you got to play the musical chairs with the blocks and the pages. And that's where the actual real true steady state performance levels out to, and you actually do get, like, the SSD becomes more of a bottleneck. But honestly, you're on the perfect track there, is just making the argument, like, just run the real thing, for crying out loud. You know who I'm working with. I'm not going to reveal anything crazy, but I got a company to agree to this, and I'm putting together a box, and they said what, or I asked them directly, like, what circumstances do you see this system running in? Like, I can run benchmarks on it, and I can do that all day long, but who are you guys selling to? What do you want to see out of this? And they told me, well, we see this as a cloud provider system. We see this as we see this used in virtualization environments, in compute on demand environments, and also in virtualized gaming environments. And I said, okay, cool. I know how to do all those things. Tell you what, I'm going to take your server. I'm going to take it to a colo that I know. I'm going to put it in production for 3 weeks. And then we're going to see, and we're just going to get results based on that. We're going to throw some loads at it and let actual customers use it, and see what the experience is like, because that's what matters. And honestly, because I happen to know the drives you're going to be using, you know, full disclosure, they might be coming from my employer, which is solid dime. But I mean, honestly, like, I just told them, like, hey, he's going to run some stuff. We just got to trust. He's going to do, you know, we just have to make sure that we're sending him drives that are compatible with that Supermicro chassis, because sometimes Supermicro is a little weird. With, like, there's a compatibility thing. So I think we might have to, like, put different firmware on the drives just before they go out to you. But, you know, you're going to have a pretty decent chunk of storage. And it's, as long as you qualify, like, even if it's not practical to actually do a full drive write, which I wouldn't even expect you to do in that scenario, at least you just got to qualify when you talk about the results. Say, hey, look, we might not have actually hit steady state here, but these things were pretty dang fast. Like, look at this result. Here's how well it did, or whatever, right? It's all about, like, just, you know, being clear about it, right, and running the right kind of workload. But the right kind of workload is the absolute first. Like, that's the main thing that I've probably said more times than I'd like to even admit. Like, the best benchmark is the real thing. It's always going to be the case. Right? Now, in my work, I do the best that I can to try to replicate the real thing, because it's not always practical for me to do the full, like, you're going to spend hours.
I'm going to spend a week getting
Yeah,
this,
that
getting
thing you're
this up
working
and
on.
running. Yeah.
And that's just a single configuration doing a single set of workloads, right? It's not, it doesn't scale with the human factor for someone in my position to be able to do that,
Right.
you know, to a dozen systems and try to go in different ways
every
with each one and
potential
get
scenario and deployment situation, right?
right. It's just not practical. So a lot of my work is distilling the kind of stuff that runs at the server level down to try to replicate it just with FIO or with like a trace playback or something at the device level, just so that I can not go crazy.
Yeah.
Right. And so I can then I'm able to test like a round of competitor drives, and I only need one of each SKU to do it. I don't need a whole server and to spend a week on each one, you know, because like the last time I did a round of competitive analysis, there was like 40 different SKUs.
Yeah.
That's just crazy. Imagine doing the exercise you're about to do 40 times.
Yeah.
Right? It's not practical.
Yeah.
And it is a bit of an art trying to get a synthetic thing to act like the real thing. But, you know, the closer I can get, the better it'll be. And then usually what that turns into is I'll use that sort of to figure out, okay, because now that I'm on the dark side and working at a company, like I have to use that to some sort of effort other than just I'm not publishing a review roundup of 40 drives.
Right.
Even though I kind of missed that and wish that I was, but I'm not. Even though I have all the numbers.
I can send you testing to do if you want to do that for me.
Listen, I'm full up, trust me. But I can take that round of results and, you know, sort of use that to guide, okay, we only have enough lab time and systems to test like 3 different configurations, right? So it's handy to have someone like me running off to the side and figuring out, okay, out of these 40 different drives, what are the things to make sense to try to make a claim out of? And so then I can say, okay, looks like we're doing the best against competitor X, Y, and Z at this particular workload, and you know, and I'm able to just sort of steer the bigger lab moves that happen, you know. So I'm able to apply all those skills I got from back in the day, all the PC per, you know, all the benchmarking, all the crazy benchmark person stuff. But again, all that, like, I think I was the first review site to just do a grounds up, like, just complete clean sheet of paper, full test suite. Like, I very quickly, when I took over storage testing from Ryan, I very quickly moved away from the Crystal Discs marks and the HD tunes and the HD tax and the, you know, like I probably spent like 5 years just publishing, even for regular client, like just standard drives. I had reviews full of charts. I didn't even have so much as a PC mark storage test or like a file copy, none of that, because I did my best to replicate what all that kind of stuff would do synthetically, and then sort of distilled that data into bite-sized charts just to do easy comparisons and try to, you know, make it easy just for a person to figure out what's the fastest drive. Right. Now, it did eventually go crazy because I think the last review that I published at PC Per had like 120 competitor drives all on the same chart. It literally went all the way back to X25M.
Yeah.
Like the OG.
Jeez.
The drive that got me into reviewing because I found the slowdown bug with it and got Intel to fix it. Yeah. Because of Ryan Shroud.
Okay, so, yeah.
I was just Joe Schmo out, just bought, I just wanted a fast SSD, and to which I promptly did like 2 VMs and an OS install on. So I just scrambled the crap out of this poor 80 gigabyte drive. And then it immediately slowed down to a quarter of its rated write speed and would not bounce back, and that's what the bug was.
Yeah, so
right?
I was also a Joe Schmo for 15-ish years before starting the YouTube channel. And and I had run the YouTube channel for another 5 or 6 years before Intel goes, oh, right, there's a YouTube channel in my backyard. Maybe we should invite him to some things that we talk about. I actually met Ryan in 2010, maybe.
Makes sense. It would have been PC Per.
Yeah. Because
Intel server event, probably.
Intel
something?
server event. I was invited from the community, from like community professionals in the area to come check out SSDs and data center and server installs. And so they did this whole presentation, and at the event, because it was a community event, they gave everyone 180 gig SSD. And so that was my very first SSD.
Let's see if I could find your very first SSD. Hold on.
I think I might still have it out in my garage, but yeah, it was 180
As he
gig.
casually just grabs a stack of SSDs from the shelf here.
What's
Okay,
funny
hold
is usually I'm the one who turns around and goes, oh yeah, I've got this stack of things right here. Hold on, let me pull out this one very niche part that you just mentioned.
on. Well, X25M, because of course.
Yeah, it wasn't an X25. It was
no.
silver and it had it was one of the hologram stripes.
Oh, I know the one you're talking about.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
might
yeah.
not be on the shelf. But if it was the 180 gig, Skulltrail logo on an SSD.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, buddy. No, actually, I don't have that one on the shelf,
No.
believe it or not. But I do have this guy.
PhotoFast.
Do you know what goes in there?
Ah, gosh, I recognize the drive.
8 micro SD cards.
Oh, that's okay. That's right.
It's a RAID 0 of the worst possible storage
Yeah.
in a SATA SSD.
You know what you need to do?
Oh boy, here we go.
I can call up
Here we go.
Lexar. I can get 8 of the 1.5 terabyte drives today.
I don't know if this would work with. I don't know how big this can go.
Um,
Listen, this came out before the X25M.
The micro SD standard, even going back to it all depends on if it's using SDXC. I probably wouldn't be compatible with SDXC, so you're probably right. It probably maxes out at 1 terabyte. Because SDXC extended that to 4 terabyte.
But that could be an 8 terabyte drive, I guess.
We could make an 8 terabyte drive. That'd be fun.
Yeah, I know the drive you're talking about.
Yeah.
It was, if it had the little hologram
Yeah, it was like a
kind of
hologram
thing.
swoosh at the top of the label. Yeah.
And if it was 180 gig, that was the oddball capacity, which means it was X25M G2 based.
Okay, yeah.
Which means, hold on, as he goes to the shelf of round things. Oh, come on. I need to do this without breaking it or fingerprinting the crap out of it. That had 25 nanometer NAND in it.
Which means it's right there.
Which is this.
Nice.
Yeah. It's almost like the Austin Powers penis pump scene.
Yeah, almost. I do recognize the...
Here's a picture of you holding the wafer in the fab.
So I did get a fab tour.
Was it Lehigh?
Full bunny suit.
Yeah.
Yeah. This
Was it Lehigh in Utah?
No, this is Portland.
So you got like a not flash memory.
No, not Flash. Yeah, I got the fab tour of gosh, what is the Building 1, Building 4 at Intel here in Hillsboro.
Yeah.
And did that tour with one Dr. Ian Cuttress.
Yes. Good old Ian.
This was 2022, December 21. Excuse me, 21. Crap.
Apparently, Jeremy Hellstrom of PC Per is giving me crap about my shirt because he happened to pull the same shirt out of his closet, and so they're probably currently podcasting.
With
I have the shirt on, and he has the shirt on. So if you change the channel, you're just going to be confused.
It's just going to be another guy wearing the same shirt.
It's another guy wearing the same shirt. And it looks a little different.
Yeah, no, sorry, it was December 22. Because
what is this? QuakeCon? Oh, 2009. Yeah, okay.
Or no, it would have been 21. Okay, sorry. I'm just trying to figure out when in my head for two reasons.
Oh, when you met Ryan, yeah.
No, not when I met Ryan, but when I got the Fab tour and went through with Ian. It was December of 2021 because my son was 10 days old when I took the Fab tour. It was actually like questionable whether or not I'd be able to go. He ended up being born 3 weeks early, and so he was already home from the hospital, and everyone thought it was fine. I was like, okay, I can go on the Fab tour now. Also, it was in the middle of still COVID lockdown, and so it's like, are we even going to do a Fab tour? Like that was up in the air.
Hey, listen. I can't think of a better place to be than a Fab.
Than the full bunny suit, right? Exactly.
And the cleanest of rooms,
Yeah.
right?
So we ended
Like
up going.
it's above medical grade clean room.
Right. And we can say this now because this was in 2021, but Ian and I were walking through and there were some wafers coming off the line that were being scanned and for validation for a certain process.
Yeah.
And Ian goes, "Can I take a picture of that?" And they went, "No." And he goes, "Well, screw you." And so he leans in and he looks down and he looks up at me and he goes, "Do you see what I see?" And I said, "I see side by side substrates." And he goes, "Yeah, that's Sapphire Rapids." Coming off the line right now. So that
there was one Flash Memory Summit where Samsung was like showing whatever their brand new wafer of their right, and it was like so new that they like didn't even want to like you couldn't even walk up to it and take a picture.
Yeah.
And you know, and I'm like PC per. I'm like working on PC. Well, come on, like it's press. Like you don't want the press guys can't take a closer up picture of the
right. Yeah.
Right. And I was like, okay, how far back do I need to be? Right. And it was like me and Les Tokar standing next to each other. Les Tokar is the editor-in-chief of SSD Review. Right. And so we're both, and like Les is like a camera guy too, but he's usually got this big hip slinging Canon with like a barrel that slides on it, and you just wait for like a a bazooka round to come out of the thing, right? And like, and I just had my, where is it? And I had my my camera, and I'm like, and we're like, and both of us, we kind of gamed it. We're like, okay, you tell us how far back we need to be. Okay. And we kind of didn't really show what cameras we had.
Yeah.
Right. And then, so the guy's like, okay, and he, like about 10 feet away, right? Yeah. And then me and Les just go, okay,
keep going. Yeah.
and we lean over the line as far as we can go. And I ended up getting a die shot. I had to crop it a little, but I literally had like a one die, like almost full frame, just from across the booth. And I was like, okay, we'll play your little game. We came prepared,
I think it was at Supercomputing right after Ian and I got the Fab Tour. Intel had a booth at Supercomputing, and they just had a random wafer sitting on there for display. And I think they were I don't even remember what they were introducing. But it was I think it was whatever their 10 nanometer mobile was at the time. Early 22.
And it was just a wafer of them.
It was just a wafer. It was just, and it was sitting just in a case right by the whole thing. And it had been there for like 3 days. And Ian and Paul Alcorn walked by it.
Yep.
And they they were just sitting there and they're shooting the crap, shooting the breeze and whatever.
Yeah.
And Ian looks down and he goes, That's not Alder Lake. What is that?"
Yeah, because he just
you look at so many charts, you know what. And so he starts doing the math and he goes, "That's Raptor." What? And so he asks the guy behind the booth, he goes, what is this? He goes, "Oh no, that's Alder. That's the 12th gen. That's the 10 nanometer. That's the whatever." And Ian goes,
"No, it's
okay,
not.
Do you mind if I take a picture?" And he goes, "Yeah, of course."
Since it's the old one, fine. Let me take the picture. Yeah.
So what had happened was Intel needed a prop for the booth of whatever, and someone went in and grabbed a wafer and set it down and went, "Here's what we're introducing."
They thought it was Alder, and it was
Raptor. It was the unannounced Raptor Lake product.
Awesome.
So him and Paul got like super close die shots of that chip.
Oh yeah. Well, it's so funny that the Optane wafers, when they're not completely finished, they actually look so much cooler.
Yeah.
Because it's dark.
Yeah.
Because the type of process you have to use to have literal liquid metal phase change.
It's that super dark purple, isn't it?
It's like it's dark. The color is whichever way the light's bouncing off of it. You can literally just rotate it.
Yeah, it's like an iridescence.
And it just goes. Yeah. It just goes through the different colors, but not really reflective.
Yeah.
At the same time, I might I don't know. I've half thought if I could get my hand, like I might literally try to dissolve the copper layer off of an Optane wafer. That
That'd
would
be kind of cool.
just,
Yeah.
it would be sacrilege, but it would be very cool. It's just so funny that I was trying to get an unfinished.
And they're like, no, here's a production one. Go
No,
for
no. All we got is sorry. We just got these shelves just here. We're just, you know. Oh man, it's just so silly.
Cannon Lake. It might have been Cannon Lake. Not Alder. I couldn't remember the exact one. It was whatever.
Dude, the chat's been coming in clutch with the code names. Just
they
out of
really
no-
have.
like,
Oh, my chat is incredible.
Dude,
they come in so clutch with so many different things.
I'm pretty sure Cherryville might have been the SSD that you were talking about earlier.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cherryville?
I think so.
Okay,
I think
yeah.
so.
Yeah.
I mean, I might be wrong. It's been a while since I had to deal with those particular code names, especially since I was not even working at Intel when those SSDs came out. So I was like twice removed from the code names.
520, 530 series Intel Cherryville. That's exactly it.
Oh, there you go.
It was the 5.
Oh yeah,
it was the 520 180 gig.
Yeah.
Yep. Nailed it. Well done.
Yeah. Actually, yeah, I actually had that wrong because I thought it was the X25MG2. Well, I think it's based on that though. I think it was just the next.
Yeah.
I think they spun. I think it was still the Intel controller.
Yes. Yeah. This one was still Intel.
Yeah, because it was right around then that Intel. I don't want to say they got desperate, but like they didn't have 6 gigabit SATA ready, so that your drive is probably 3 gigabit.
It's 3 gig.
If I had to guess.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and then that's when they dabbled with. Okay, let's get a SandForce controller.
SandForce on.
And they also did a Marvell. There was like 2 in rapid succession from each other.
Okay, I remember. I remember it was a big deal when the SandForce controllers came in.
Yeah, so they did SandForce.
Yeah.
They didn't seem too crazy about the SandForce one for the same reason that everybody else that had theirs randomly brick, because if the moon was in in alignment with Jupiter and you
Saturn
turn the
was in
system on,
retrograde and
then it would like it was not even kidding, like it was.
Oh, it's the third Tuesday on a blood moon. Yeah,
you had a 1 out of a 512 dice roll chance that the drive would brick itself powering on, basically.
Yeah.
Is what the SandForce bug was.
Yeah.
And thank God the Intel drives, they had done enough validation where and Intel has a habit of they'll just like rewrite half the firmware, even if it's somebody else's controller. That there's just great engineers on the storage side over there back in the day.
Yeah.
So they did the same thing with the SandForce, and they did it with Marvell. But then they shortly after that, they just said, no, screw it. We're just going to take the data center drives, and whatever's in the data center drive, we're just going to spin that back downstream and make the client drive. And that's the one with the Skulltrail logo was, the first fruit of that.
Yeah.
Which was the 750 SATA or 730.
That sounds right.
The 750 was the PCI one. The 730 was the SATA one.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And those were just variants, like client variants of the bigger, badder data center drives. Basically the same.
Yeah. We ran a lot of the data center versions from that generation. We had some of the 800 gigs and the 1.2 terabyte when they came out, the big boys when they came out. In fact, hold on 1 sec. I'm going to do the same thing to you.
Jordan in the chat says he can overclock better than I can. Probably. Although I will say my 3495X in the Homelabs server may or may not be overclocked enough to pull 900 watts on its own.
I have a full stack of the 1.2 terabyte. These are the S3710s.
There you go. I would have to go to the basement to get my other box to start shuffling those around.
How many of those do you want?
Oh, Jesus. What's sad is that Wendell and I both can do those shuffles with 905Ps. Because we're both such Optane junkies that every time Newegg started doing the blowout sales, like Limit 5, $200 each for 1.5 terabyte Optane.
Yep.
Like whichever one of us sees it first, we send the other person a message, and either he's already bought them or he's like, thanks.
Yep.
Give me a second. Ordered. Right? Every time they go on sale. Now, the really funny inside baseball thing is that I was on a meeting about a week before I left Intel to go work at Solidigm. The first time, because then the client division folded, and then I went to work at Phison for a year, and now I'm back at Solidigm. But this is how the weird industry people move around. Anyway, as I was leaving, I was in a meeting where one part of the meeting they were talking about all of the extra inventory of Optane wafers they had, and then the second half of the meeting was, here's how we should price our Optane. Here's all the reasons that we can't price it any lower than this number because we made a deal with so-and-so for this number, we made a deal with so-and-so for this number. And so Intel boxed themselves at a corner with how they worked their data center pricing.
Yeah.
Because you could see doing that with like a Xeon or something, but if you try to do that with a storage product, like they were legit trying to price a storage product that had Optane in it at the same retail price that the 3-year-old product that was basically the same product.
Yeah.
They had like the client drive was at like 118 gig or 58 gig. Remember those? It was like the SATA Optane. It had like 1 or 2 Optane, packages on it.
Yeah.
They were trying to make like a gaming. They thought a gaming system would be okay with just 118 gig drive.
Yeah.
So that's the reason it didn't really catch on. They were called 800p was the model.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I remember those.
So that had come out like 3 years prior to when I was having this meeting, right? And then during the meeting, they were trying to do like I forget what it is. It was like a 1600X, I want to say, like basically a server boot drive, right? But guess what? 58 gig and 118 gig, starting to sound familiar, right? At least it was using all 4 lanes of the bus instead of just using 2, like the previous product would, right? But basically the same because the performance was limited by how much Optane was there for the most part. If you only have so many packages of Optane, it can only go so fast, right? Because you're more capacity constrained on what the max performance is. So we're in this meeting talking about this drive, and they flash up the pricing, and the numbers look familiar to me. And in the meeting, I opened up my PC Per review from 3 years prior and showed the last page of the review with the pricing, and it was the same price for both drives.
Yeah.
Compared to this failed product from 3 years prior. And I was like, are you guys really going to try to sell the same capacity, almost the same performance for the same price?
3 years later.
And just 20 minutes ago, we were talking about how there's so much excess supply and we don't know how to move it and sell it.
Yeah.
Right? And it was like, listen, I only did high school level of economics.
Well, but if we sell it for this price point, we're going to cut into our consumer division, and it's going to...
Dude, exactly. There was like some NAS company committed to buy 50K of them at this number, and we can't sell it for cheaper than that, right? And one of the last sentences that I uttered on my way out of that meeting was that the discussion sort of ventured into like 905p inventory that we had, and I was like, dude, you got to sell those drives for like, and I don't remember what the number was I just spit out off the top of my head. I was like, the only way you're going to sell them is if you price them at this, and then I bet you could move enough of them that you could probably even start pulling, like slicing up more wafers and even respinning up the supply, the supply chain and make some more PCBs and order some more, controllers.
Yeah.
You could probably move some of this wafer because the wafers had already been written off.
Yeah.
It was already considered. It was all free money at that point.
Yeah.
Right. It was just stuff that was rotting on a shelf.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. If you guys can spin up a $6 PCB and 50 cents in aluminum, you can sell these for $200. Like,
of which everything is already designed. Everything's done. It's literally just make more. Right. And whatever that number was, the reason I remember it so well that I was on point with that number is the first Newegg sale that happened like 2 months after I left was that to the penny. It was that somebody just literally like took notes during that meeting.
Yeah.
And then they just made that the thing. And then Newegg blew out so many of them that I did still talk to people inside Intel even after I left, and I found out that they had done like a few more cycles.
Yeah.
Of the 905p, because every time they would put them on sale on Newegg, they would just blow out.
Yeah.
Right? And the 905p wasn't competing with anything else because they didn't have any deals going anymore because it was already technically end of life product. Right? So Intel moved like, probably like a petabyte worth of Optane.
I think they did a lot more than that because everyone I know, whenever they came on sale, bought 5 of them.
They were buying 5.
Everyone did.
Yeah. Yeah, I have like 15 just sitting in my basement in the blister packs I haven't even opened.
Yeah.
Because every time they go on sale, I'd be like, quantity 5 max, okay.
Yeah. So
I'll use them for something.
So some random guy named Jordan in the chat says, "Oh my God, this guy."
Is he talking about you or me?
He's
Here's
talking
the
about
thing, because oh, okay. What did I do?
If you think to the Jordans that you know which Jordan I speak of.
Oh, is it the Jordan I'm thinking of? Yeah, it's the Jordan I'm thinking of, I bet.
Yeah.
Oh, using the 6144 Celadime driver as a beer coaster right now? Yeah, it's the Jordan.
It's the Jordan you're thinking of.
I know which one it is, yeah.
Hi, Jordan.
Yeah, no. I'm just getting spun back up at the Celadime. I honestly have 0 Celadime samples in my house.
Yeah.
Like, this is sacrilege. Like,
I have
need
more
to fix
than
that
you right
immediately.
now. It's incredible, yeah.
Yes, exactly. Do I have any huge SSDs? They're like 100 tera. No, well, the highest they're.
Allyn let me hold one in Vegas.
Yes.
And
Jeff
by the way, the quantity they had in Vegas was
122.
1. Yeah.
That is true. No, we had 2.
Yeah,
we had
did you have 2? Okay.
Yeah. And there might have been like a half a dozen just floating around internally or whatever. Like they built them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are announced. Like the Celadime 122 is announced.
Yeah.
They're shipping. Like there's customers to have them and stuff.
Yeah. I know one guy in particular who has one. He posted a photo earlier today, and I went, "You son of a."
Yeah. No, they're out. Yeah.
Yep.
Now, I mean, there's some caveats to those drives though. Just because they're huge, you actually have to treat them a little differently because they have. Here, your audience is super savvy, so we can actually go down the rabbit hole if you want to.
Yeah, I like.
You know what an indirection unit is?
Say that again. Sorry.
Do you know what an indirection unit is?
Indirection. I do not. Okay.
So when an SSD has to keep a table in its memory of what goes where.
Yes.
Okay. The indirection unit size that your audience and you are probably familiar with is 4K.
Okay. Yeah.
So 4K is typically the smallest size of which an SSD will track which thing got sliced, and this is over here and that's over there, and the resolution of that table is 4 kilobytes in size.
Yes.
Right. So each little entry in the table is a 4K block.
Correct.
Somewhere on the drive, right? You might have seen some drives that with ZFS it says like the physical sector size is 8K, or it might be some other size. Okay. That means that's what the indirection unit size is typically. So with a 4K indirection unit size, a drive will have the amount of DRAM on the drive will be 1/1000th of the amount of NAND. So it's a gigabyte per terabyte.
Okay.
Which in the industry we refer to as just 1-to-1.
Yeah.
Even though it's 1,000 to 1, but you know, it's just the same number basically, so it's easy to remember, right?
Yeah, it's the memory required to remember where on the drive we stored this block.
Yes. And so you'll have drives that are DRAM-less, but technically they still have a little bit of SRAM in them, and then they use some of the host memory, but they cheat and they use some host memory to try to keep the table in memory somewhere so it doesn't have to pull it from the NAND, right?
Correct.
But the client drives that have DRAM, your typical M.2 whatever, it's usually 1-to-1.
Okay.
Even if it's an 8 terabyte drive, it probably has 8 gigabytes of DRAM on it. If it's a drive that has DRAM, right? Obviously, this is not practical for a 122 or 128 terabyte class.
Terabyte, yeah.
Right. It's just not.
Yeah.
Right. So what that means is the indirection unit size.
Gigs of memory on that.
No, it's not practical. Number one, costs too dang much.
Yeah.
Right. Number two, it's actually going to consume a decent amount of power.
Yes.
And the drive only has a 25 watt power budget if it's U.2.
Yeah, if you think about like a standard DDR4 or DDR5 DIMM, you're talking about 4 to 5 watts per DIMM when you're talking about 128 gig DIMMs.
Correct. And you probably, even though it's 5 or 6 just die worth of, or packages worth of DRAM just sitting on the PCB for the SSD, right? So it's not a DIMM, but it's kind of on par with that as far as the power consumption. Right, you don't want 5 watts worth of DRAM out of 25 watt drive.
Just
Like
sitting there.
just sitting there taking 5 watts,
Right.
right? It's number one, it's not efficient. Number two, it's going to take away from your power budget when you're trying to write to the drive because that's where the most power is consumed by the NAND itself.
Yep.
And so you actually would have to make the drive run slower.
Yeah.
Just because so you would think that like, oh yes, I have the whole table in memory, that would be great. No, it's actually worse.
Yeah.
Because your overall power budget just suffers. So as you get to these bigger drives, the indirection unit size goes up. So I think the Solidigm 61.4 drive is I might have these wrong because I haven't been fully up to speed on this, but I want to say that's like a 16K IU.
Okay.
And then the 112 is probably like a 32K IU. But basically they're to the point where it's just like, look, we're just going to stop at this much DRAM. And we're just going to make the IU sizes bigger. Now
we're going to give you 32 gigs, and that's what you get.
Yeah, basically,
yeah.
Right. Like any more than this is just overkill.
Yeah.
So this is just what we're going to do. And what that means is, and this sort of just goes with the territory, because if you're going to make a data center and it's going to use these enormous drives, the expectation is that your block size is probably bigger than 4K.
Yeah.
You're not going to be hitting this thing with a SQL database. And it's 100 plus terabyte SSD. That's not what it's for.
Right.
You want the fast, nimble database thing. That's what your TLC drives are for, not your crazy big QLC drives.
Right. Exactly.
Right. Yeah. So it ends up lining up okay anyway. It just means that you have to do a little bit. You have to be aware of it, because if you or any of your audience get these huge drives and you try to do stuff with them, you're going to want to change your A shift on your Z pools, right? Like ZFS might not actually lock on to the fact that it's a physical, you should treat it as a physical 32K per block device instead of 4K.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, because if you Swiss cheese 4K randoms among where you have a table that each entry only points to a single 32K block, then that means that if you do any little bit of random performance over time is going to really the performance is going to fall off a cliff.
Yeah.
Right? It's going to be way worse.
This is actually a really interesting thing that I've been thinking about lately. Because speaking directly to like the Homelab crowd, forever, since the invention of PCs and data centers and servers and things like that, and people have been bringing the data center equipment home and plugging them into their home networks, the data center stuff has been essentially the same as consumer stuff. Like there's never been a real delineation. Like sometimes with the Xeons, you got 4 cores instead of 2 cores, but that was a very narrow window.
Right.
Beyond that, the top-end Pentium 4 was the top-end Xeon. And the Xeon had extra, maybe an extra controller for ECC and a couple other little, bespoke components. Right. And wasn't clocked as high so it could be more stable, but maybe better resistors so it could maintain that stability. Like, that's the difference between Xeon and Pentium. Like, that's what it was. Same thing with graphics, same thing with storage, same thing with memory. It was the same thing, the same technology, a little bit more refined and 10% slower, simply so it could stay stable and run forever.
Yeah.
In the last 4 years, that has shifted dramatically. Because now we're running into situations where, and I'll give NVIDIA some credit here, with their 8-blade or their 8 GPU carrier boards that are the SXM carrier boards that'll hold like 8 P100s and 8 V100s and things like that. It's the same chip, but it's a completely different form factor, and a completely different interface, and they're all linked together, and they all use things that are not they use the same components as the consumer, but in a completely different way. However, the further along that we've gotten from like 2018, 2019, and especially, like I said, the last 4 years or so, we're getting into some esoterica with data center gear, that they are completely different products that run in completely different ways, that run completely different components from consumer gear. And
Yep.
we're to the point today, the stuff coming out today for enterprise, you could never run in your home, ever. You don't physically have the capability. You don't have the power delivery to your house to plug in one of these servers.
Yeah, like one 4U needs like a 60 amp circuit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, that capacity doesn't exist to the home consumer.
Who wants to double that money? Is it David in the chat?
David keeps asking you to double. Yeah, I love the 4 trays that you just pulled out.
This is for David to look at.
You want to lick one of them? Because that would just... There you go. That's perfect.
I could just do an Ian.
Yeah, just... Yeah.
Yeah. They're all blue, too.
Yes.
All of them. Just all. Precious. Poor David.
I won't even ask for a tray. I'll just ask for 6, because I've also...
Here we go. Allyn has some random crap.
Yeah.
I don't even know if Jordan knew that I had 2 trays of freaking Barlow Pass BMM.
Yeah.
Just sitting.
Yeah, Jordan says SXM or SXX GPUs come to mind. Yeah, and NVIDIA's, 8 GPU per carrier board, completely ConnectX on the back end.
One GPU is like a kilowatt, and by the way, there's 8. Like,
right,
it's just,
by the way, there's 8 of those. There's not a circuit. You couldn't buy a breaker big enough for your house. You need 3-phase to be able to break that down.
The beefiest APC4U UPS you can get can't even support the 1 4U server.
Right.
Think about that.
Right.
Right? Yeah. It's completely out of the realm of a home anything.
Yeah.
For that.
And so
it's just...
it's been a really weird, from someone who worked their entire career doing some data center stuff, but really my bread and butter was small, medium-sized business, where a business might have 2 or 3 racks in deployment. And all of that stuff was not even the top end. They would buy the mid-tier enterprise stuff because it was stable as hell and it'll run forever. But you're talking about chips that draw 125 watts. You're talking about off-the-shelf SSDs and memory. You're talking about maybe a graphics card if they're like going really heavy into like banking databases and things like that. And you'd run 3 of those boxes, and oh my god, those 3 boxes draw 800 watts between them. And you figure that out, and that's the kind of environment that I'm used to. But then I'm going to GTC, and then I've had a couple briefings for Computex, and we're talking about 180 and 300 kilowatt 42U racks.
Yeah.
42U.
I mean, all I can say to that is thank goodness they still have like some workstation class GPUs.
Right.
Right. It does kind of kill me that I don't know, the Intel didn't do a post Sapphire Rapids like Xeon W, right? They didn't do the Emerald Rapids.
Emerald Rapids? Does Emerald Rapids have a...
I think they were gonna, but I don't think they did.
I think they were gonna. I don't think it ever made it. And Xeon 6 came out slightly ahead of schedule, and so I think they just kicked it by the wayside and said, no, we're just going to ship this.
Yeah, which is a shame because like Emerald Rapids Sapphire Rapids has some little... It's great that it's unlocked. It has unlocked SKUs for workstation and you can overclock it and stuff, but it also has like some gotchas with that overclocking.
Yeah.
And there's like some kind of buggy stuff that Wendell has told me about too that I wasn't even aware of that he found, because of course Wendell finds all the crazy stuff that I don't find.
Wendell finds any edge case that is possible.
Dude, yeah. Wendell, like
dude.
Me, I can find edge cases, but for storage only.
Yeah.
Right? Wendell will find, it doesn't matter where.
I typically find edge cases for PCI Express bus. Like I will stress PCI to the absolute limit, and that's kind of my specialty.
Right.
But Wendell, if an edge case exists and you hand Wendell a 4U box, he'll go, oh yeah, here's X, Y, and Z from these 3 different components within the server that I maxed out, and they're the bottleneck of the whole thing.
There was one time where Wendell and I both together found, and it was funny because like I stumbled upon it, but I couldn't really reproduce it correctly or figure out what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, and this is what I love about Wendell, because I was like, I called him, I'm like, hey man, like, I got to figure this out. Like, let me come down there. You want to sit down? Like, and both of us were in like one of the back corners of his office there.
Yeah.
And it actually took both of us to solve the problem, because The problem was I was applying so much I/O pressure, so much just I/O flying around everywhere, not just to the storage, but to the, DRAM, everything all at the same time. I was actually like hard locking under Linux. I was freezing, not panicking.
I'm done.
Everything just stops.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it was to the point I had Wendell trying to side channel into the BMC of the system to like figure out what was going on. That was locking up. The out of band management was locking up, right? And it turned out that like I think he had even like figured out what it was, and we're not sure if we got it completely fixed, because it was one of those things where you had to do a very particular configuration, and even if you changed like one parameter, you couldn't reproduce it.
Yeah.
It was like such a weird edge case. It was like an edge case of edge cases.
Yeah.
And he was like, and he was doing all this like foo that I never even knew existed. He's like reconfiguring the out of band management from another system, like not even using a command line. I'm like, you could. He's like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna. I'm just gonna change this fan curve. The system's.
Until
oh no, dude!
You get in the same room as Wendell.
Until you sit next to one, then you better take notes.
Wendell's a goddamn ninja. He really is.
I literally have like there's a note in my phone that I bring to the top of the list every time I go over there, and it's just the first line is just Wendell, and it's literally all the shit I learn when I'm doing, because he'll just stream a conscious. Yeah. Like I'm sure occasionally I'll say a thing that he's might be learning for the first time, but only if it's storage specific, right? He's like, oh yeah, that's cool, and he'll just remember it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, hold on, I'll pull the phone out while he's talking to me. I'm literally like, oh really? And I'm like we're having lunch together, and I'm literally just like typing shit into my phone.
This last year at 45 Drives, there was a day where we weren't doing anything, and it's like, oh, you've got a free afternoon, go do whatever, and everyone else was like, oh, I need to edit this video and whatnot, and I'm like, I'm here, I'm not editing videos, I'm not doing this for the content, I've already got my thing for 45 Drives up. So
you hung with Wendell?
So I hung with Wendell. We went and had Thai food, and
yes,
I sat with Wendell
loves Thai food
for like an hour and a half, and we just had some Thai food, and
and he'll just go, right?
Just go.
And like your brain will freaking explode because you're trying to eat.
Yeah.
It's difficult.
I'm like, this is a wonderful falafel, and it's really spicy, and I'm like on the edge of my tolerance, but I can't stop listening.
Yes, that's exactly what happens. Yeah. Seriously, yeah. No, it's freaking. It's great. Like anytime and there were times where he was like, "Do you got like a bunch of Optane drives? I want to like really hammer the crap out of this Threadripper box." And so I showed up when we had like an Optane off. like I showed up with a pile of like
tumbleweed rolls in between you.
Yeah. We actually did. There's an intro there where he's like piling like stacks of SATA drives, and I just gonna slide in, slide in with a box of P1500X, like Honey Badger of all SSDs drives, right? Yeah, but then, dude. If you ever when you might have seen this in some of his videos, this will crack you up, but he never puts the M.2s all the way in. They're always just hanging. You know how they go in at an angle? So they're not even supposed to make full contact that way.
I know.
And he's like running. He's booted off of the drive.
I know.
It's like you could blow on it and
screwing
panic.
it in is too much work, Alan. Didn't you know that?
It was an ASUS quick. It had the little
tab.
It had yes, like all the drives, right?
Like Supermicro's gate, because on starting with their X12 and H12, they started doing the plastic nub, which is like this little like captive thing that if you've ever like blown up a pool floaty or something like that, it's the little valve that closes it.
The little thing,
so it's on like this plastic tap, and you can flip it around and you can lock your drive in like that. ASUS did them one better, and on a lot of ASUS boards, and I think ASRock is starting to do this now too, they have a quarter-turn locking mechanism that's on the nub. And so you put an M.2 drive down, you fold it down, and then you go
rotate it,
and it's locked. And it's great. And why is that not the standard? Great. I don't know.
But even then, Wendell won't do it.
But even then, Wendell just goes, that's good enough.
Wendell doesn't.
It's hanging out at 20 degrees.
So I show up with all these P5800Xs, of which, of course, it's just a desktop board he has there with Threadripper in it,
Yeah.
right? And so and this is back when like the adapter cards were barely rated for Gen 4.
Yeah.
And we're trying to make Gen 5 work on these adapters, like, and I had to figure this out for Intel because we were sampling out the P1500Xs to the press.
Yeah.
And we knew none of them had anything native Gen 5. They were all tested on desktop systems. So we had to go through and buy just go on Amazon randomly and buy one each of like 12 different adapters. And then I literally just myself just took the drive and just like stressed them, with these different adapters, figured out which one was the most compatible, and then we just ordered another round for all the reviewers, basically.
Yeah.
And
you go, so
here's a
Gen 5.
Right. And so I show up with a few of those, and Wendell, of course, had already done that operation independently because it's just Wendell.
Because Wendell does.
Of course, because it's Wendell. And he's like, oh yeah, you using those such and such ones? Oh yeah, I got those too, and he whips out just like a stack.
I got like 7 of those. Yeah.
Yeah, he already has like, and so between the both,
I got one for each slot already. Come on.
Right. So between the both, well, no, he needed a few more, so like it was good that I brought some, but like between the both of us, we made this Threadripper just airtight, like all the way, top to bottom, all the slots, right? I'm pretty sure he was just using the BMC GPU, the freaking
2600.
Right.
The A speed.
Yeah, we didn't even have a GPU in the system,
yeah.
Right? And it was just completely loaded up with these things, and it was like the bottom 2 slots of the Threadripper regressed to Gen 4 because they couldn't negotiate a Gen 5 just that far away.
Too far away.
Right?
Yep.
But all those drives, do you think we put the screws to attach the U.2s to the adapter boards? Which, by the way, the U.2 is like, gravity pulling away to try to
the slot below it, which is also being supported by the slot below it, which is
yes, but the slot below it has traces on the back of the board.
I know.
And it's an aluminum grounded drive, and it's just so yes, it was. We literally somewhere I have a picture of just this cringe fest of like
you have
7.
You have to have some faith that they at least clear coated the PCBs before they shipped them.
I mean, hopefully that's all that was the insulator at this point, though. But yeah, we just had like 7, just a brick of 7 of these drives on adapters, and the drives had like just come out. And it was probably like $30K worth of storage just sitting in this little brick, precariously almost trying to short itself out.
There's a couple great moments that you'll ever have if you ever meet Wendell, and one of them is getting like brand new things to do, the things that they were designed to do, but throwing them together in the most haphazard way possible.
Yeah, because
it's like, let's put 36 drives on 7 PCIe lanes, and how fast will they go? Like, everyone who's met Wendell has that experience. The other experience is you go out to get ice cream at 11 p.m. with Wendell.
Yeah.
That's the other one.
That kind of stuff happens.
Yeah. Is Wendell will knock on your hotel room door and go, hey, I was feeling like an ice cream cone. You want an ice cream cone?
And
you go with Wendell at 11 p.m. for ice cream.
Oh, yeah. Any opportunity, if you get an opportunity to go and be in the same room with the Wendell, then you just do it. I'm overdue to go down there.
I don't make it your way all that often, but I guess Supercompute is in St. Louis this next year. So
that's kind of.
It's not. It's as adjacent as any tech event gets to where you guys are at.
Yeah, it's true. We are kind of,
So I'm hoping to make it Supercompute, and then I'm hoping to extend that by a couple of days and maybe pay a couple people some visits. So maybe we can make something work.
Yeah. We can do that.
Yeah.
What else was on the list?
That's a great
we're having
question.
We're having too much fun.
It's already 8:05, and we've made it through one story. That's it. Like I told you, I have to let all new guests know at the beginning of the show, this is fast and loose, and wherever into the weeds we get into the weeds, because I love those kinds of genuine conversations that happen there.
I was worried that 3 stories might not be enough, or 4 stories, but apparently not.
You know what's really fun is our viewership went whoop, and then it flatlined, and it's held since about 6 minutes in.
Well, whoever was going to come showed up, and thank goodness they're staying.
Exactly, and that's typically what we do. Is
we haven't talked them out of the room yet.
That's right.
Thank goodness.
Oh
man.
So This one was a fun one, and this story is actually in here for Circuit Rewind Vince, the BSD. He'll show up in another second. I can also say Voodoo 5, and he'll show back up as well. So we just summoned him twice.
Does Voodoo 5 have a BSD driver?
Ooh, that's a great question.
We crossing the streams there?
We're crossing some streams. Oh, man. He is going to be...
I don't know if it ever did, but he would know. So, Vince...
He is going to be shut in for the next 4 days to figure that out.
He's going to write it himself.
He's going to write it himself.
It's just going to happen.
Remind me if I don't... I will try to remember this. I'm going to send you some pictures of one of his LAN rigs that he built 6 months ago. It is an Athlon XP Windows 98 rig in which he designed a PCB for a power backplane that's running a Voodoo 5500. It's fully water cooled. I'm trying to think of everything else that went into it. I have one of his prototype power backplane PCBs in my garage. He gave me one of those.
Yeah.
But he didn't want... He wanted to run ATX cables and wanted to run a modern power supply, which doesn't have a negative 3.3. And so he built a power plane so he could plug in a modern ATX unit. It's all in a vintage 1998 acrylic case. He bought an acrylic power supply. He hand rewired the power supply. He hand built the PCB to interface with everything. Dude. It's a power distribution board that plugs in the 20-pin ATX and his 4-pin for the GPU and his 6 or so 4-pin Molex to go to his hard drives. And it's all period correct, but it's all like modern. What would the extremists do? It's nuts.
It's freaking great is what it is.
So yes, if the Voodoo 5 doesn't have a BSD driver, he will spend the next 4 days writing one because you just sowed that seed.
Oh man, sorry, Vince.
He has 2 Voodoo 5500s. He has one that he bought from the guy who remanufactured some of them a couple years ago. He also has the prototype board that Linus and Luke signed on the WAN show as a charity giveaway. He was the high bidder for that one.
The highest I went was the 3000, I want to say.
Yeah. I never owned a Voodoo card, and that feels weird to say from the generation that I am, but I had an ATI 3D Rage 128.
Yep.
I had a TNT 2. I had all like the outskirt, like Voodoo came out with this, and then NVIDIA counterpunched with that, and I had that card, and Voodoo came out with the Voodoo 3, and then ATI had this thing that was like 85% as good, and I had that ATI card, and so I always had like the trailing wake of
I had the one ATI card that I had ever bought, which was enough to make it the only ATI card that you would buy, was the All-in-Wonder Pro.
I did eventually get an All-in-Wonder Pro. It was many years after.
Did you live through the same, some random star is not aligned, you need to deinstall and reinstall all of the drivers and only do them in the correct order, otherwise it's not going to work.
Oh, that's classic All-in-Wonder crap.
Oh, yes. Good Lord. Yeah, I pretty quickly, I think I had that card I endured it for maybe a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the only reason I made it to a year is because I was gone for 6 months out of that on Submarine tours.
Okay.
But every time I would come back,
I had...
Yeah.
People complain about drivers today. I had...
Oh no, it was so bad.
I had at one point an ATI Radeon 2400 XT, but I didn't have a PCI Express board, so I had the AGP version of that card.
Mm-hmm.
And the AGP version was buggy AF.
Yeah. That was back when AGP wasn't, I mean, yes, technically it was just supposed to be the same interface with a different form factor, but it had to be treated differently at the driver level.
Right, because it's running off the PCI 133 bus, not the PCI Express, which is a separate chipset at that point. So it was still a shared bus with the rest of your things. It was the AGP8X interface. And I had so many problems with that card. And I bought that card brand new.
And this was like driver issue equals Windows reinstall.
Yes. Yeah.
This is what it was back then. There was no DDU.
Yeah.
There wasn't even a possibility of doing a DDU.
Oh, no. This was back in the day that a graphics card installer fundamentally changed the way Windows worked at the kernel level.
Yeah. Right.
And so there was no uninstall this card and upgrade to another. No, when you put a new card in, you reinstalled your OS from scratch. That was the only option to ensure stability.
Now get off our lawn.
Yeah.
It was so bad, though. Oh, my goodness.
But what's really fun is
so painful.
Oblivion came out in 2006. And that right around that same year, I want to say like early 2007, at the time, my dad worked in medical radiology for his entire professional career. And he had a client who had a workstation for viewing like the 5 and 6 megapixel medical images that were being produced at the day. And they had a workstation that had an ATI X1800 512 meg card in it. And that workstation kept having it kept blue screening, it kept crashing, it kept doing all kinds of things whenever they would try to pull up images or do things in a certain way. And so eventually they pulled that card out of the workstation and replaced it, and the issues went away. And my dad goes, "What do you want me to do with this card?" And I said, "I don't know, just throw it away. Send it to a recycle or whatever." And my dad goes, "Hey, I know you're into computers. Do you want this card?" And I went, "I'll take the card." And so he gave me at the time a $550 Radeon X1800 card. And
that's a very nice, especially, listen, $500 was worth
that
more
was a
back then,
5090.
Right.
To put it in like modern day terms.
Yeah.
He goes,
somebody gave you a 5090.
"I can't use this Blackwell 6000 Pro. Do you want it?"
Right.
And I went, "Yeah." And so
it came the driver curse.
Right. Well, no. So I had the 2400 at the time, but that was the AGP, and the X1800 was the PCI Express. It was the previous generation, but the absolute top end of the previous generation. And I went,
so you had less issues.
So I went out and bought myself an AMD X2 motherboard specifically so I could get a PCI Express slot. Put that card into there. And it ran at like the edge of stability. I think I ended up doing like a 20 megahertz underclock, and it ran perfectly for 4 years.
Yeah.
It was like that feather's edge of like, if you blow on it the wrong way, it'll crash. But if you take 20 megahertz out, it's rock solid stable.
So getting back to your concern about the server hardware that's just out of the realm of Homelab, right?
Yeah.
You do still have some legs in this, because think of all the people that are still running like Skylight boxes, or even
absolutely,
right?
Epic Rome.
So people are, Epic Rome's even almost too new compared to what I'm talking. Like, people are still just chugging along on these way older, right?
Yeah. So
you still have like probably a decade worth, like, listen, like a Sapphire Rapids Xeon W is pretty dang good.
Like those chassis are going to be available, and they're going to run, and they run on 120 volt, 15 amp circuits.
They're stupid expensive right now.
Yeah.
But give it 5 years.
Yeah.
Right? So there's still, and I'm sure something else will come along. I got a feeling that the workstation thing is going to have, somebody's going to have to keep dipping their toe back in the workstation thing.
Yeah. Although, we're in kind of a weird spot with that, because if you look at AMD with the top end of their consumer lineup with chips like the 9950X, good God, that's blowing the pants off a 64 core Rome from 4 years ago.
Right.
And doing it
gets to the point where it gets to the point where the high-end client system can sub in for a decent home lab box too.
Exactly. One of the
Right.
biggest problems that we're seeing in Homelab, and that we've been fighting for about the last 5 years, is availability of PCI Express lanes, where I can go and I can buy a mini PC based on a Ryzen 5600U that will absolutely trounce a 12-core Ivy Bridge box.
Yeah.
And do it at 35 watts TDP rather than 170 watts at idle.
Yeah. But just not many lanes for room for activities with the lanes.
But
basically.
you've got 12 PCI Express lanes to work with, and you put an NVMe in there, you've taken up 4 already. And so I've been talking to AMD and Intel, the players that be, the people that you probably know. I've been going, look, there's this gap in the middle of the market that you're overshooting with server and you're undershooting with consumer. Consumer needs to come up at some levels. You need the AM5 socket to be able to support 48 PCIe lanes. I'm not saying 128, 192 that the new, Turin boxes will do. I'm not saying Intel give your Raptor Lake, your Arrow Lake, your Lunar Lake, 128 lanes. But give me more than 24. Because that's a slap in the face.
Even those Xeon Ws, they split it and made 2 separate lines. One line was 112 lanes, but the other line was 64.
Right.
Proving that there is my desktop is a 2495X. This is 64 lane.
Yeah.
It's more than enough. Like, if anything, it's even overkill for what I'm doing for it. But still, it's in the middle.
Yeah.
Right.
Even 40 lanes from the old Intel HEDT, your 7th, 8th, 9th gen. That's more than enough for a consumer, but there are some consumers, there are even some workstation clients that need more than a graphics card and 2 NVMe drives. I run a Blackmagic Decklink 4X HDMI 4K capture card. That's an 8X card.
Yeah.
I have it in an X4 slot, which means I can only use the first two ports on my card right now. That's not acceptable, and I'm not willing to spend the $4,000 it would take to turn my 5950X 16-core desktop into a workstation. Yeah. Like, I don't need a Threadripper here.
You could potentially get that in that config. You might be able to get to buy 8, but only if you dropped the GPU to buy 8.
Right.
So
but a lot of consumer motherboards don't allow you to configure that.
Right.
Either. And so they'll have the option for a buy 16 or a buy 8 and buy 8. But that's not user configurable unless you have 2 X16 cards in the bank. Yeah. And so there's
it's sad when you look at like an old X99 board and you go, yeah, that's a pretty good board.
I got 48 lanes. I could do whatever I want on there.
Exactly. Yeah. But to think of how old that thing is now, right? But still, like, it was a beast as far as lanes, and heck, it's not even running on DDR4, I don't think, for that platform.
X79 was DDR4. Yeah.
Oh, it was DDR4, yeah.
X79 was DDR3.
Yeah, but just like, man, you got to put something in the middle there.
Yeah, there's got to be something for the people who need an X16 graphics card and an X8 or maybe even 2 X8 expansion cards, 100 gig NIC and a capture card or something to that, or sound or audio engineer or whatever, plus at least a pair of X4 NVMe drives. And so,
I mean, AMD was doing it with Threadripper, but then they kind of got into this megapixel race of must make the bigger and more expensive Threadripper.
Right.
And like, no,
give
me
all
the
of a sudden,
class
Threadripper processor is $5,000 at the entry level, and it's like,
right, which is ridiculous. Right. You kind of lost the market, or the scope of like what the whole goal was of the exercise was in the first place.
Right.
Right. I mean, HP is making they make like a Z8 workstation.
Yeah.
Based around that Sapphire Rapids Xeon, right? The 112 lane version even. And you can go all the way down to like a 12 or a 16 core.
I think 12
I want to say.
At the bottom end.
Yeah, your bottom is like a 12 core config, and they'll actually ship it in that configuration.
Yeah.
So it's like, clearly you don't need a whole bunch of horsepower, and that's like $1,000 CPU.
Yeah.
Like workstation CPU, right? But you could put quad 6000 ADAs.
Yeah.
In that config, right? And throw compute those things all day long.
Yeah.
And
there's no reason to charge $5,000 for a platform if all you need to do is put your same 2 chiplets that are in the 9950X with a bigger IO die.
Right.
And give me 32 or 48 or maybe even 64 lanes if that's the IO die that you have. I don't need the quad channel memory. I don't need the 64 core setup. I need 16 pretty decent cores, and I need the IO to support it.
And just more lanes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And unfortunately, even if you try to work around that and do like a PLX on a motherboard just to give you more lanes and share the bandwidth, like those things are just ridiculously expensive for the ones that can do Gen 4 and Gen 5.
Well, it's because who owns PLX?
Well, yeah, I know. Don't remind me.
I'm going to pick at that scab for every chance I get.
Yeah, it's just eating away at the good stuff.
Yep.
One company at a time. Yeah, I mean, I know a guy that works on boards that use those chips, and he has headaches on account of.
Yeah, I think the Gen 4 PLX chips are selling for $650 to OEMs. $650 if you want to bifurcate your PCI Express
chip.
Per chip, not the implementation, the chip.
Yeah,
it's because they got the patent on it, and they say, "Hey, this is how you bifurcate PCI Express lanes." And they're like, "Well, there's 20 different ways to do it." They said, "No, this is the one way you do it, and this is the one chip that does it."
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, listen, the market will make that have to come down because they're just at some point they're going to realize we could be selling a lot more of these if we don't charge $650 for them.
Right.
But
for
the moment,
now,
at least,
what's the incentive for the OEMs for the actual manufacturers, Intel, AMD, to support more PCI Express lanes? Either someone buys a weird niche motherboard with a PLX chip, or they spend $5,000 on your platform.
Yeah.
Where's the incentive for them to hit that $1,500 price point?
That's why I still say, like, things like that, Sapphire Rapids workstation stuff, like that stuff, hopefully it goes along in the tooth and is around for a while. And, as the stuff gets cheaper, you could just build the system with more and more cores if you did want more and more cores.
Yeah.
But, yeah, just like what popped up in the chat, like, you can get if you're okay with the 64 lane, the 2423, which I think is the 12 core. Isn't it?
Sounds right.
It might be 8 or something, or maybe they go down to 6 even. But like, if you're okay with having fewer cores, it's $360.
The W3 2423 is 6 core 12 thread.
Okay, yeah. So it's 6P cores that are decent.
Yeah, 4.2 gigahertz, 2.1 gigahertz base. Only 15 megs of cache, although that's still 3 megs of cache per core. That's not terrible. And 140,
but for that small amount of money,
144 watt max TDP. That's at turbo speeds.
Think like the BOM of that thing. In order to build that, they might be losing money. Like, it's got to be dead because I mean, it's an enormous part.
Yeah,
you're spending $350 on a thing that's that big. Just by money per ounce, just by weight, right? This is a new heavy item from Intel.
Yeah,
and but I would recommend, if you're going that route, like, spend a little more, get like the lowest tier that's unlocked.
Yeah,
because those things, you can easily go over 5 gigahertz.
Yes,
with those things, and they're all P cores.
Yeah. I've said this kind of thing for Intel before. I love that they finally looked over at AMD's camp and went, wow, AMD in their giant reset for Ryzen kind of pulled an Apple and said, why are we producing 700 SKUs? Let's make 3 SKUs and let's do them really, really well. And AMD started producing 1 chiplet and 1 IO die, and then 2 sockets to put them in. And then whatever packaging you wanted to arrange them in, whether you had 4 chiplets or 8 chiplets or 2 chiplets or 1 chiplet with the same IO die across every SKU, that's the part that we make. Intel looked at that and went, wow, that's a really good idea. what if we divided our cores and our I/O and our graphics and our NPU and our Ethernet and our PCI Express and all these other things, and we divided those into wafer? I said, okay, that's a really good step forward. And they went, but what if we then packaged them all on a unified glass substrate? And I went, son of a bitch.
Yeah. Now, I will say that does get them some stuff. Okay.
It gets them some stuff, but they missed the train entirely
correct,
on why.
Correct. But I will say that the one thing that it does get them, even to this day, I'm pretty sure, I/O latency, like storage device latency. If you're measuring, nanoseconds and microseconds, back and forth, Intel platforms tend to be quicker than AMD platforms, even now. Right? And part of that is because, yes, it's handy that you can have these three standard things that you can just mix and match to your heart's content, but you have to make a few compromises there as far as how that interconnect goes, how much latency it has.
That's absolutely correct. Yeah.
And I mean, they've gotten better at it from what I understand, but it was very much like when that Infinity Fabric stuff first came out, it was really bad.
It was really bad. Yeah.
It was the I/O latency latency was like really, really bad.
Yeah. Your two cores in this quadrant could talk to the two quadrants directly connected, but it could not talk to the quadrant that was down and away. That was two steps away. And so depending on where your workload landed, you could only use 3/4 of the CPU with very enhanced latency to the fourth quadrant.
Yeah, and you have to remember what happens when you do a storage I/O. If you just want to do one request, right? You have to issue the request. It has to go traverse, potentially bounce through memory as part of what the program needs to access. As part of it's just running the code, and then it has to, again, propagate out to get out to PCI to go to the device to tell it, hey, I want you to get me this stuff, right? And then that process is over, but there was some latency associated with that. And then the device in the background tries to do DMA and go directly to the memory, which, by the way, has to interrupt all the stuff going on.
Yeah, DMA is an interrupt request, for those who didn't
DMA
know.
Technically is, you have to remember, though, the device is trying to talk to memory, which if you have fabric that the CPUs are also sharing, you're literally you're not just going to interrupt the core that was running the storage workload when it's done, but you're also interrupting the related cores before you even said that it's done and it's in memory. Right? So it shot itself in the foot like 5 times during an I/O. Right? Where
and people go, that's only, an extra 7 microseconds or whatever of latency.
They add up is the problem.
But it's per instruction.
Yeah.
It's per cycle. It's per clock. It's per round we go. Yeah.
Right. And I think I did a blog on the Intel side about I forget what it's called. It's are you leaving performance on the table? Was in the title, I think. And I did that. I just took a Samsung, it was a 980 Pro or something, and I just took the AMD client system, the best one at the time, and best Intel system at the time. Yeah. And I basically just did let me scrutinize how this drive performs over here and sort of plot out. And I actually did the walk the reader through all the different levels of complexity. It was the one time I used Crystal Disk Mark. I started with Crystal Disk Mark, and I was okay, they're pretty close, but look, this one's a little better over here. Okay, now let's dive a little deeper. And then I went down to iometer.
Yeah.
And then I went one layer deeper, which was where I was actually logging every single request, what was the latency of every single one, and plotting out a really fine, detailed quality of service chart and showing the AMD system just hangs a left over here, and it's got this big old tail of latency. This is not good. We want this to be vertical. We do not want it to go this way, right?
AMD's mentality was hurry up and wait. I think is the best way to put it.
And so
really
I was able to
initiating the requests, but really terrible about finishing and actually fulfilling.
Yeah, and even though I was working at, the bad guy like Intel in that context, and I'm sure people were, there were people that tried to call me an Intel shill, but I was duh, I'm working at Intel.
They sign my paychecks. It's kind of goes
I'm working there, but I was really able to just frame it I was look, I test SSDs. That's what my job is. What platform am I going to choose? Here's all the reasons I have to choose the Intel platform because, again, like I said at the beginning, it's got to act like an instrument, like a meter. I can't just have the system just adding all this latency till I'm trying to measure, an SSD.
Yep.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. So, we didn't get too much flack over that article, but I know I'm doing it right when we pissed off both sides at the same time, at least in the press. But
yes. Yeah. and to give you, Allyn, an idea of how I like to run this show, we got there from Voodoo 5 on ReactOS.
Oh yes,
That's
yes,
the
exactly.
trail that we took to.
I don't know how many tangents there were, and
a lot.
Yeah, the stack is very tall of the
yes,
of our code here. Of all the tangents, I don't know if is there any pieces we need to pick up. Did we lose?
I think we're good. I think we got the bullet points in there. ReactOS supports Voodoo 5 now. So
yes, okay.
Vince will be hard at work this weekend writing a Voodoo 5 BSD driver if he doesn't already have one in the back burner. I might have just dug up a GitHub project from him from 8 months ago, but by Monday we'll have a Voodoo 5 BSD driver. This last one, this third story, is the one that I just found the most humorous for the week. And I think you were in that same camp. I mean, you've got a giant server rack in your garage. It's full of 22 terabyte drives. Lots of Linux ISOs, I'm sure.
Oh, all of them.
As the parlance goes,
it's
right?
It's like a mirror of archive.org.
Lots and lots of Linux ISOs. We're backing up archive.org. We're preserving any content that we could possibly get a hold. Yeah.
Data hoarder.
Data hoarder. Yes.
r/data hoarder.
So about between it was right around 20 years ago there was a series of ads that would play both in theaters and right after the FBI warning of this can land you in jail and $250,000 of if you bootleg this tape. Had
a rap song in it.
It was a very iconic advert from the MPAA, Motion Picture Association of America, that started out with a guy like Slim Jimming a car window.
That was one of them.
Yeah. It was Slim Jimming open a car. There was another one of like a mugger on like a train or something like that, like stealing some woman's purse. There was another one of something else.
There was one that was just a couple of kids sitting at like the school computer, and they're like, "Oh, we can play this game later. I'll just copy it."
Yeah, no,
right?
and that's kind of.
And then the screen gets wavy, and like in comes the rap dude. Starts singing a song.
It's this guy in like a beanie with a Slim Jim, and he goes, "You wouldn't steal a car," and then it goes, "You wouldn't steal a purse. You wouldn't steal a candy bar," and you wouldn't kill a policeman. You wouldn't, that whole thing.
This is where all those modern day memes of "you wouldn't print a car" come from, by the way. Was the
you wouldn't download a car? Yeah,
you wouldn't download a car, but
the
to
hell
print
I
it,
wouldn't.
Right? Exactly. Yeah.
Right. But then it shows this girl at her computer at home, and it's this great like old vintage CRT. Even for 2005, it was starting to feel slightly dated. And it's like, she's sitting and she's looking at this webpage and this giant green download button. She goes, "Oh, download." And then she's watching a movie, and then it goes, "You wouldn't download a video, or you wouldn't download a movie. Stealing or downloading videos is piracy." And what that ad did is not alert people to the fact that downloading movies from weird websites was piracy. It let people know that I can download a movie for less effort than going to Blockbuster.
I can download a movie? I didn't even know that was a thing my computer could do.
I can download the movie? That sounds way better. And so not only did it not curb piracy, it actually encouraged it. Like it's the exact same thing as the DARE program in the 90s, where it's like, oh, here's all the different drugs and what they're called and how to buy them and what the street value is and and what the different effects are depending on your preference. It was that kind of an ad.
You just flashed me back to playing Dope Wars on a Palm Pilot.
I referenced Dope Wars in my video last week because have you played the game Schedule 1 yet?
Nope.
There's a game on Steam called Schedule 1. It's I think it held the like third place spot on Steam's most played over the last 3 or 4 weeks.
Crap. Here you go. You're being a bad influence on me.
It is modern day Dope Wars. It is everything you love about management sims with a little 3D stealth aspect to it, and all goofy animations, and
Schedule 1.
Schedule 1, yeah.
Okay.
Named after Schedule 1 drugs. So
as I literally spend money.
It's $15. It's well worth it. Anyway, this ad ran, and it didn't have the intended effect. Well, there's some irony in this ad, because it turns out that 20 years later, we have determined that the very iconic fonts, you wouldn't steal a car, you wouldn't steal a handbag,
which is a significant, like, part of the video.
Yeah.
Like, it's significant that it was big, bold, like, you know,
the
really
font
trying
was
to get the point across.
Because it was big, bold, impactful, iconic. That font was stolen.
Oh my goodness. You wouldn't ironically pirate a font. That's great.
Strange thing, we were able to recreate that exact image using the exact font used in the video, and it is a copyrighted, trademarked font that was not available for commercial use.
See, now that's the important part, because you would think, like, how could you possibly know that they didn't buy it? But that's key, right? If it was not available.
Right. The site's...
Okay, so what's the detail? Copyrighted by who?
The site's fonts.com suggested that the font used was a font called FF Confidential, designed by Just Van Rossman in 1992. Melissa Lewis, a reporter for the Center for Investigative Reporting, noticed fonts in use identification, and she remembered that she noted a computer person, Parker Higgins, had been digging into a very similar font, X Brand Rough. X Brand Rough was later confirmed to be a clone of FF Confidential, and quote, had just been around forever and is kind of ubiquitous.
Right.
But it was never licensed for commercial use. And as goes with fonts, like, I'll tell you, as someone who has licensed fonts for my own use, for my own channel and various things, my OpenViro logo is a licensed font, so I can use it for commercial use. I've sold water bottles before. This pattern, these circuit designs, I licensed this pattern and the elements within, and I also bought a license so I can redesign it, and that's how I was able to make it wrap perfectly, and that's actually what this and my glassware is based off of.
Right.
It's based off a stock image that someone produced that I spent a not inconsiderable amount of money licensing so I could produce my products with it, because it was the exact look that I wanted.
The key point being, you did the appropriate thing correctly.
I licensed it, I own the license, and I have a lifetime license to this thing. And it's for an unlimited number of products produced, and I can use it in print and digital as well. Like, I made sure that it was covered by everything. And so, yes, like, while I did spend a painstaking amount of time reimagining the layout, like, the layout is like a 3:2 aspect ratio and has all these elements in it, but I took all these elements and I rearranged them to fit on the shapes that I needed. But I also licensed the base image as well as a derivative license for it, so I could do print, merchandise, and digital. All of them, all inclusive. And I've done that for the font, and I've done that for the circuit design. They end up being original works by me because they're not the original image, but they're derived from the original image, and they are licensed. So yes, I do know some about this.
But it's just the cherry on top that after all this time,
20 years later, it turns out they didn't have a license to use that font.
Turns out they were just fine with copying that floppy.
Yeah.
After all.
That's the most ironic part of all, is you wouldn't copy that floppy.
The call was coming from inside the house.
I feel so much better about all my archival data now. Like,
I do, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah. I will say it is kind of by a miracle that I have, like, going back to literally the box of floppies I used to carry around in high school. Mm-hmm. Like, I format shifted it. It went to, like, zip disks, and then it went to, like,
Oh, I've
You know,
got some of my original burn CDRs that I've archived, and that archive still exists on the NAS that I run today.
right. I
Yeah.
format shifted. It's on the NAS. I still have like somewhere in the garage attic or something. There's just like a couple of those, flip file things of CDs and DVDs and all numbered, right? Just from like, the drive's almost full. Burn a DVD, right? Yeah, I put a picture in the chat. Somebody from the PC Per side wanted to watch us and PC Per, and I guess they have a triple monitor set up, so they're also playing Minecraft.
Nice.
So shout out to Mer PPC on the PC Per side, who's probably, that means he's listening to 2 podcasts at the same time.
Yeah, that's a little much for me.
That's too much, really.
Yeah, we got the PC Perf guys.
Yeah.
We got us, and then
and Brett's wearing a Commodore 64.
No, he's not playing Minecraft. He's watching a Minecraft runner.
Oh, he's watching someone run Minecraft.
Watching a third live stream.
Well, listen, at least it's a little easier for to handle. I thought he was playing it. Yes, definitely bow down to triple YouTube simultaneous. Holy crap. Oh.
Yeah, that's
actually seeing Brett wear that shirt. He reminded me I need to pick that shirt up because that was my first computer was a Commodore 64.
Yeah.
Yep. Back in the day.
Yep.
Learned how to write BASIC, one painful line at a time.
Yep. So there's one more story, and it's actually tangentially related to, I guess, copyright and piracy and things of that nature that I'd like to touch on. And that is, out of the blue, the Wii Homebrew channel. That is the Nintendo Wii, the homebrew project that has been going for, I want to say, about 15 years or so. It's been a long time project. I don't think they have the date listed right here on the page. But anyway, I think I modified for homebrew my very first Wii, I want to say in 2009, 2010-ish.
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah.
I had one too.
Yeah. And installed the homebrew store. Or homebrew channel.
Did you do the clear blue case mod? Like we changed the case to like the one with the. I
didn't ever change the case. I really liked the white. I kind of like the white. At the time, I also had a 2008 Mac Mini, one of the first Intel Mac Minis.
Yes.
Intel and NVIDIA Mac Mini.
Yes.
Ooh,
yes.
Yeah, I had one of those, and I kind of liked that whole aesthetic. And so I had a Mac Mini on my desk. I had a Wii, and I had a couple other white consoles.
Yeah, but the homebrew thing, like, that was cool. You could do other stuff with the hardware,
download your emulators, right? You upload homebrews, that kind of thing. It's been a mainstay in kind of the homebrew console community. They abruptly shut down yesterday. Yesterday, this news broke. There was an update posted to the README. This repository is archived and will not accept any further contributions. Like most Wii homebrew software, this software depends on this library, libogc. After development of the homebrew channel had already started, and I'm just going to directly quote this because this is the easiest way to get through it quickly. After development of the homebrew channel had already started, we discovered that large portions of libogc were stolen directly from the Nintendo SDK, decompiled and cleaned up. The Nintendo SDK is the software development kit for the Nintendo Wii for game developers to be able to produce games on the hardware, basically get bare metal access to the PowerPC underneath. Including portions copied directly and pasted from SDK header files. One example, libogc, Nintendo SDK. But there are many others. Casually browsing the headers will show that the vast majority of APIs are all but identical. There are also bits of documentation copied from the Nintendo SDK, as well as executable binaries disguised by being called data in the identifier that are copied verbatim from the SDK. We thought that at least significant parts of libogc, such as the threading implementation, were original and reluctantly continued to use the project while distancing ourselves from it. When you go and hack a console, or more appropriately, reverse engineer a console, reverse engineer the OS and the hardware that lies underneath it, there are two ways you can do it. One way is you get a hold of a legitimate Wii development kit and software development kit, and you take the APIs and all the system calls and all of the associated documentation for how to directly interface with the hardware, as provided by Nintendo, which is also NDA'd and owned and trademarked and copyrighted by Nintendo, and you use that for nefarious purposes.
That's, by the way, what Jeff just described is the wrong way to do it.
That's bad.
Yes.
There is also a way in which you can reverse engineer, which is called the clean room environment, in which you have no access to any Nintendo developed API, SDK, internal tools, internal hardware, internal development kits, debug boards, debug builds, anything. And you painstakingly reverse the zeros and ones into machine calls.
Yep.
That is called a clean room approach, and that is why projects like the Ship of Harkanian, which is the Ocarina of Time decompilation for the Nintendo 64, which lets you run Ocarina of Time on the PC, can't be taken down by Nintendo because it's an exact 0 and 1 decompilation, decompiling it into C++ code to then be able to recompile it to run as a Windows executable.
Yeah, cross-platform.
That is completely legal and legitimate. Nintendo has no standing because there's no Nintendo written code within that code.
Right.
The homebrew channel
was relying on a thing.
The Nintendo homebrew, or the homebrew channel, did it the right way. However, a library that they relied on did it the wrong way.
And that got shut down.
Yes, and so libogc got shut down, which is it was libogc because it actually started with the GameCube. And the Wii basically runs the same underlying code as the GameCube. It's the same hardware, just different, a couple different calls and a slightly different software base, but it's essentially the same platform.
So until and unless somebody does a clean sheet of that, then everything that was relying on it is basically dead in the water.
And even then, everything that was relying on it will likely need a rewrite themselves. So, I mean, this is going back 15 years to some very original documented code.
The chat does say libogc is technically still up, like on the Git.
libogc is up, but the homebrew channel
is not doing any updates.
It went read only, and they said, look, we were basing all of our code off the fact that libogc told us they had reverse engineered and clean room engineered this API to be able to work with the Nintendo Wii. Right. There's been some mounting evidence over the last couple of months that is entirely not the case. And in fact, as some more people have done a lot of digging and gotten a hold of Nintendo SDKs, they have found direct copied code, direct copied comments, literally just like relabeled APIs, a little bit of obfuscation, but...
So it sounds like this is the community acting even before Nintendo did.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
And bravo to the community for doing that.
Right. Yeah.
Circuit Rewind chimes in. Jeff, you're missing point number 2. They didn't just steal from Nintendo; they also stole from other free open source projects and renamed them. Yes, that is also correct. Again,
That's
going back to like
cool.
a font discussion, and like discussions of putting your work out into the community. You can open source things, but you can open source license things. And anything that's open source typically comes with a license. And at the very minimum, most things come with what's called an attribution license. You can use my code, but you have to tell other people it's my code.
Right.
So they know where to get the original information from, and they know where to look for updates from.
And it's credit. You're getting credit too. You
You're
worked on the
getting
thing.
credit for doing that thing. Right, exactly
Yeah.
right. You can't just take, like, OpenViro. We are going to be launching our firmware as open source once the
Right.
crowdsource campaign or crowdfund campaign is done. You can't just take my code and put it on your device and call it your code. You can't sell my code.
Right.
It's my code still. You can use it, but you have to tell everyone where you got it.
Right.
And apparently the Live OGC team didn't do that either.
Wait. They still... What? I'm reading the chat and they're blowing my mind. Artem's? They stole Artem's code? I don't understand. Hold on. To use in this project? What?
Yes, Patrick says.
Artem's is real-time executed for missile systems.
Yes. Part of the code was because the homebrew has to run in active memory. They stole parts of the RTOS.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So real-time operating system.
Not the missile.
Not the missile command and control.
The means to the end of the thing that runs on missiles.
Right.
Okay, sure. All right. I mean, sure, but technically if that's like a government thing, then it's supposed to be public.
Right.
It's publicly funded. If it's open source, like, I don't know if that, okay, I don't know what the specific license part that they broke by using that.
Vince says, yes, the missile software.
Yeah. Right, I'm trying to figure out, I'm not familiar enough with that because I don't think the Trident ballistic missile submarines missiles use that. I think that's like Tomahawk missile stuff, not because SSBN, the big missiles, go way further back than that. They're not running that kind of.
It has recently been revealed that the threading and OS implementation in Live OGC was in fact stolen from Artem's. The authors of Live OGC didn't just steal proprietary Nintendo code. They also saw fit to steal an open source real-time operating system and remove alt attribution and copyright information.
Okay.
And from what I understand, the original authors' signatures were still in the base of the code.
Oh, great. But that must have been open sourced as well, I assume, that operating system, for them to get it in the first place.
Right.
Huh. I'm kind of surprised that's even out there, honestly. That's kind of impressive.
Yeah. It does say an open source RTOS from Artem's.
Yeah, okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Trying to think if I have an appropriate trinket to show, but I don't have any missile specific.
You don't have any missile control boards sitting around?
No. I worked on the reactor stuff. I have some pieces of reactor plant instrumentation.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
But I have a picture. I have a picture of a big printout that we gave one to each of the crew members of the ballistic missile submarine that I was on.
Nice. And
the whole crew is standing on top of the submarine, except for the very few people that are literally sitting at the reactor plant, because you have to have some minimum. There's always there is one chair on the submarine that there's
below, right?
Yeah, there's always a butt and a seat in 2 or 3 places on that side, until it's decommissioned.
Yeah.
Right? Until the reactor is literally removed, there is a butt in a particular seat.
Yeah.
No matter what. And I'm the only guy in the crew that's not in this picture. Not because I was running the reactor, I was taking the picture.
Nice. That's usually me. I have a decade worth of crew photos from different things that I've worked on where I'm the one behind the camera.
Yeah, and this was back. I had to manually panorama stitch this together. I had to manually distort the 2 pictures because this is back. You didn't have good panorama like stitching software and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, back that far. Yeah. Yeah, that's a big boy missile submarine with 24 big old missiles on it, of which I don't think ran that operating system though. Yeah, I don't think I have anything else like appropriate with the, like missile stuff. No, it's all like reactor stuff, random reactor trinkets. Hmm. Yeah, I don't know. That stuff's all like Stone Age stuff, man.
Yeah.
Like you would think it's all fancy computer. No, it's like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Stuff that was like designed in the 80s,
Yep.
and they just, why do you need to change it?
Yep.
There's real, it's just this thing can survive like a depth charge 100 feet off the bow
Yep.
already. How are you going to make it any better?
Not to toot my own horn, but I've been trying to market OpenViro as we're making a smart device, but we're making it as dumb as possible on purpose.
Yeah.
We don't want your data. I don't want you to create an account on my website that you have to log
Right.
into and run a specific API to a bespoke application that only runs on certain versions of Android and iOS to receive notifications for data that you should already own. It's SNMP. Read it with whatever software you want. It's not running SSH. It's not running a web server. It's literally just SNMP. And we had to engineer it to be as such, which is ridiculous.
Dude, it's short circuit.
Yeah.
It just runs programs.
Yeah.
It's just that's it. It's literally it literally just runs
Johnny 5.
just runs programs. Yes.
No disassemble.
No disassemble.
If only the Libo GC people had heard that. No disassemble.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Or just no. Or just no. Don't
Or just
copy
no
that floppy.
recompile.
Don't copy the source and leave the author's names in it to Control F.
Yeah.
Oh my, that's like really egregious when you get to that. That's like you're not even trying.
Yeah. So so that's the claim that's been most recently found out. Like there's been claims for a couple of years that they had copied some of the Nintendo SDK, but as the Nintendo SDK is an open source, like it's been like he said, she said, based on what version of whatever SDK they received, and there's a couple of lines that look similar.
Yeah.
Oh, all of a sudden when Artems comes out and it's a completely open source thing and you also copied the author's signatures, little harder to hide that fact.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's
that's when the homebrew channel decided we're gonna stop.
it just baffles my mind that particular code from like military missile. Yeah. I'm just kind of surprised that there's even new code or like a new OS. Well, it's got to be that the military was using it. I think the OS must have existed not for the purpose of the missile systems, right?
Real-time executive for multiprocessor systems, formerly real-time executive for missile systems.
Son of a gun.
And then real-time executive for military systems is a real-time operating system designed for embedded systems. It is free and open source.
Man.
Development began in the late 1980s with early version via file transfer protocol as early as 1993.
I could see that probably being in like Tomahawk kind of stuff. Like that would make sense to me. Yeah, because the ballistic, like they're, I don't want to call them dumb, but they're pretty dumb.
Yep.
Like they're not intended to be smart. The Tomahawks are where the thing started to get smart with missiles, so I can see you needing that much flexibility. Yeah.
OAR Corporation managed Artem's project in cooperation with a steering committee until the early 2000s, when project management evolved into a subset of core developers managing the project. In 2014, hosting was moved from OAR Corporation to the Oregon State University Open Source Lab hosting. Everything always finds its way back to me.
Tara Pup in the chat says, the more I hear Alan talk, the more he sounded like my coworker who would also work on subs. Yeah, I mean, we kind of...
I hired a guy, one of the last techs that I hired at my last job, who was also a sub tech. And
was he like what did he do? Like sonar?
He
or like...
was, gosh, what did he do? I'm trying to remember what his exact
Could have been, and honestly, here's what's weird. It could have been like a mechanic. Like you just have to have this kind of technical aptitude to do any of the jobs on the sub, and like
Yeah.
you would tend to be in like technology
Right.
when you got out,
Yeah.
or even while you were still in. Like all those guys tend to be computer geeks for the
Yeah,
most part.
he was 52-ish. He was close in range
So he was
to
on.
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, we hired him to help head up our help desk, and one of the reasons was our help desk people were terrible at organizing the 70 plus systems that we had in storage. And I went, if anyone knows how to organize in a small space and put things on a shelf where they freaking belong, it's a guy who worked on a sub. And that's why he got the job.
He might have been in supply.
There was something about his resume that stood out of not only like he was on a sub, but he also
Either he might have run supply, or he might have been the supply person of any of the divisions on the side, because they all have to have their own person to interact with the supply system.
Yeah,
dude, supply is like a legit. You would think like a submarine, you would just like get on it and it's like a car, you just do a thing. Imagine if you had your car, but also the car happened to be full of enough spare parts to almost fix anything on the car. Right.
And
like
also 70 people who know how to use all those individual parts.
Yes, and people who were trained to actually be able to replace them and everything. Supply is no joke. I have a scar on the top of my head from a spare instrument drawer that was literally just like how the hull is like curving around, and like there's this thing called the tunnel, which is this little like 3 o'clock position of the pie of the cutaway of the submarine, and like if you walk past the reactor compartment, obviously you can't just like walk past the reactor and just kind of like tap it on the top of the head as you walk by, right? It's in a room, but you have to be able to get to the engine room, which is on the opposite side of it. So they just do this little cutout just in the very corner. And it has the hull sort of,
so you got this little spherical-ish.
You got this little weird thing like that. But of course, no nook and cranny is unused. So even in the tunnel, there's literally like a spare control drive mechanism on its side in a big old case. So naturally it turns into a desk because it's a horizontal space that's kind of like at sort of waist level,
it's a
right?
Flat surface?
It's a flat surface. And it's off to the side in a space, right? And the control drive mechanism, by the way, is the mechanism that moves the rods up and down. We had a spare. We could go in while under the ocean and replace a part on top of the reactor if we needed to. That's the extent of which the supply system had spare parts. Right? Which is like, holy crap. That's ridiculous, right? Anyway, so that was there, and then there were a couple of spare instrument drawers for like measuring how much power the reactor was making. There was just like one of those spares in a welded steel box, sort of like welded to the, to the hull, like directly to the hull. So it's not moving. Obviously. And I was working like one of the refits and stuff, and like I got big manuals all spread across this big spare assembly, right? And I'm like, and I didn't think about it, and I went like whoop, and I right into the corner of a thing that was welded directly to the hull. And it literally just like, and it was like 2 days before we were leaving. And I was in charge of the reactor control division.
Oh geez.
So it was like, I don't have time. Like that's the kind of stuff you ran into on a submarine. I don't have time to even go to the dock. We had a doctor on the submarine. I could have walked for 2 minutes. Down there, got a few stitches, which I probably should have done, but no, I grabbed like the little chem wipe thing, these little
and
like.
You're like, all right, let's finish this up.
No, I literally I had my hat tucked in my back of my dungarees or whatever, navy uniform, and like pulled the chem wipe out, stuck it on my head, took the hat, stuck it on top, right, and then like, and it was
wipe the blood off your brow,
and no, and like because it was like as soon as it happened, I immediately felt it, just like immediate. There was no delay, right, and it was like, oh, okay, bandage, field bandage, just make this stop because I'm in the middle of 5 things. There's maintenance going on. We're leaving like tomorrow, And I think I even had duty that night, which meant then I was like working way late. Didn't even have time to shower. Literally slept on the submarine day before we were going because usually you try to go home and be with your family, but it was just like so ridiculous that one time. And so it was like the next morning as we're pulling out, and like I went and finally found Doc, and I had left my hat on. And he had to try to peel. He had to try to like, he's like spraying water on my head to like soften. It's like it basically just the
oh, that's why the hair
light...
is all okay.
Oh yeah, right, yeah. No, but it's just so funny that okay, separate story for Terrapuff, which is gonna really make his ass laugh. He says he would joke that he glowed, that's why, right? We do urinalysis in the Navy.
Uh-huh.
They even do it underway. I was the first guy on the submarine to own a green laser pointer.
Uh-huh.
So we go and do the pee in the bottle thing, underway, because they were doing them underway even. And because they figured out that people could get something out of their system in 3 months, and you were gone for 3 months. So for the longest time, they weren't doing any urinalysis while the submarine was out. So people would just get away with it. They would just go hog wild like the day before they left.
Right.
And then they would cheat it, right? So they started doing urinalysis underway. So it's like we're underway for like a week or two, and they're up urinalysis, up, your number. It was always like the last digit of your social security number.
Yeah.
We're doing number 8 today, and it's like, oh crap, whoever it was, right? So I do it, and I tucked it into like my coveralls. Like I taped around it so that it was on.
Yeah.
I tucked it into my coveralls, and you had to sort of. They would literally have a guy that had to have his second person have their eyes on the bottle to make sure you didn't tamper with it, right?
Yeah.
So I go and pee, I go and I'm walking back, and then I kind of like flip on the laser pointer, and I walk into where they're counting, where they're like, logging the entries and sign the bottle and put it in the sealed box to be like analyzed later. And I walk in, and this thing, I mean, it's a green laser pointer. It's hitting like a semi-transparent plastic bottle.
Yeah.
It was literally out of like a sci-fi movie effect, right? It's literally just and he's like doing this number, so it's like all reflecting off the ceiling like it's a disco ball, right? You should have there was like some people talking around the desk where all these things were going. Everybody just like stopped, jaws just like. Because I said some silly joke like I think I spent too much time next to the reactor like as I was walking in with this just bright glowing green bottle, Yeah, so I threw some people for a loop.
Yeah.
The crazy, yes, exactly.
Yeah, doing that number. Yeah.
Doing that number, but you couldn't tell because it was just tucked into my coveralls sleeve, so I wasn't like holding it.
Yep.
So there was a gimmick. I was just holding this bottle and it's glowing, right?
Oh, that's good.
And that was before they really were like trying to regulate them. Like when you first got the green laser pointer, it was like, oh wait, green is way more potent.
Yeah,
we have to dial this. It was like before then.
Yeah.
So this was like a highly illegal green
brightness. 1.5.
Yeah, it was one of those. Oh man, fun times.
Yes.
Fun times back in the crazy Navy submarine, whatever stuff. Jesus. Yeah, but those are good people to like hire usually. Just, I mean, you're always going to have like a few bad apples that, get kicked out or whatever.
But that's with any other profession. Yeah.
Yeah, but the ratio of that's going to be pretty low.
Yes.
To do submarine stuff. It's just like a special kind of crazy person.
Yep.
To do that stuff. Yeah. I think the only reason I survived is because I was used to just like sitting on the computer all the time and like just not doing anything else.
Yeah.
So if you're used to just like being in your house all the time, it's just a house that happens to tilt.
Occasionally, yeah.
Occasionally, yeah. We were underneath Hurricane Floyd, directly underneath it.
Oh, geez.
When that big thing, I forget what year that was, but like the one that was just like on the cover or like open of Time magazine, it showed like a 2-page spread of like where it was.
Mm-hmm.
We were literally under it to the point where like we were under the eye because it got calm before it got crazy again.
Yeah.
So like we were going like almost as deep as we were allowed to go, and it was still like people were getting sick,
pulling you, and
it was just rolling the thing back and forth like crazy.
Yeah, that's
and
nuts.
we were deep enough to where we were like looking at each other like we should not be there should be no motion right now.
Right. Yeah.
We are freaking
There's so
deep.
much weight on top of us, nothing should shift. Right.
Yes, whatever that is, it should be way up there.
I never considered the implications of a hurricane, of 100, 200, 300 feet down, creating issues. Like, it never crossed my mind.
We were way more than that.
Oh, I imagine.
We're getting sick.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah, it was the only watch where I happened to be on the roaming watch instead of like the sit at the chair watch. I think honestly I would have needed a bucket next to me if I was just had to sit.
Right.
The only benefit is that panel happens to be like dead center.
Right.
So at least it's not like you're going up and down.
Yeah.
If you stand like on the side and the tube is doing this number.
Yeah.
Right? It's like an elevator if you're over on one side that curves, right? But I probably spent like 2 hours literally laying down on the floor in the middle.
Uh-huh.
Just like,
jeez.
Okay, I'm like on the verge of throwing up, and there are a lot of other people are losing their lunch.
Yeah.
So I don't want to like call to have somebody take over for me because he's in the middle of throwing up somewhere else.
Yeah. Empty your stomach first, and then come get me. Like it's
we were kind of like trying to trade off. Yeah, there were more intermittent watch reliefs during that storm than I think I'd ever seen because people were just like swapping out.
Yeah.
Like, holy crap. Please let me go somewhere lower on the submarine to like more towards the middle of the, because even if you were in the middle, if you were up on the top, it was also bad because now you're getting pushed back and forth while
side, right?
Yeah. Weird things you learn the dynamics and the physics of when you're just in a tube in the water.
Yeah.
Zachary says Nuki T. Yes, you guessed correctly based on what I was saying. Homer Simpson on the sub, basically, is the job description. That's what I would tell if we toured an elementary school and had to tell the kids what we did.
Yep. Zach's another Nuki. So.
Oh, is he also?
He's good people. He hangs out a lot.
It's a good, like, you got like your core cluster of folks on there.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep. Yeah, Zach just said I was the same. Yep.
Yep. Well, Zach could probably appreciate this. There was one other thing that was crazy. We had like a mini version of COVID like on the sub before COVID was a thing.
Yeah.
Somebody got a real nasty like 24-hour stomach virus.
Uh-huh.
And they got it right before we went underway. And over the next week, it just rippled.
Yeah.
Like through the whole,
Yeah.
That's where I learned just how contagious, like, how does a contagious virus work in a closed environment?
Right.
Right. It was like the perfect experiment, and literally nobody was spared.
Yeah.
It was one of those things that just like you're just gonna get the stomach virus, and it's just gonna attack. It wasn't from food. It was just.
Yeah.
You just got this thing, and everything emptied, and you were just down for like 18 hours.
Yeah.
After it happened.
I had a really interesting perspective for COVID because
like PDX land in the chat. Yeah, actually, probably.
Kinda. Yeah. Yeah. We had one go through PDX land this last time. We got a little bit of con crud from the latest, and so there's 22 people in our group buy that go to PDX land, and I think like 12 of them came up sick for about 12 hours this last time. But leading into COVID, like there were some rumblings in like December 2019 of this weird virus that's going around China, and a lot of weird information, a lot of misinformation, a lot of hearsay about like, oh, it's this really big thing and it's killing a lot of people, and then everyone's saying, oh no, it's not. But then CES rolls around and you're like, yeah, I've seen like these little flare-ups of like bird flu and everything else like before. Like no one thought anything of it. And so we all went to CES. And
yeah.
This is before we knew anything about it. And we all went to CES, and by Wednesday there were a couple of people that I knew that were just like sicker than a dog of like, I can't get out of bed. I don't feel like I'm not nauseous. I have zero energy. It feels a little hard to breathe. Like I can't catch my breath. Like,
Yeah.
And they were just down like Wednesday and Thursday.
Right.
And then we all went home and we started reading more about this. Well, the CDC was actually starting to do some tracking for COVID spread and things like that. The first case in the United States happened in Washington. There was another one that happened in California a couple days later. But
are you saying CES was the initial super spreader?
I think CES was the super spreader because actually what they found
yeah.
was it didn't come in the normal ports of entry. It wasn't
Right.
coming into Seattle or
Right.
or LA or New York or Chicago or Miami.
It was people
coming
that went to CES.
It was coming into Palo Alto and San Jose and Bellevue and Portland and
Right.
the not normal ports. Still
Yeah.
major cities, but major tech hubs.
Yeah.
And so by the end of February, they were going, that's really weird. And so like it wasn't the normal vectors. And CES is what spread it to the rest of the states.
That was the common denominator. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're probably the third or fourth person I've heard like go to. It's always tech folks that bring this up.
Mhm.
That they suspect that was it. I don't. The news has never covered it because I don't think there's the right person has connected the dots. I'm sure
Right.
somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm sure somewhere in the CDC there's some nerd that's like, duh, everybody, it was CES. And everybody else is probably just rolling their eyes, no, of course
There's
not.
one
or whatever.
guy who's going to be played by Brad Pitt in the biopic in another 10 years
Yes.
Of this
Right.
whole breakdown. But yeah, no, it was CES was the common denominator because all the people from China and Taiwan and everything else had flown out. And then 4, 5, 6 days later, a lot of people in the US started getting sick, but it's like Thursday and you're at CES and, oh, I just caught the con crud. I'm just going to sleep for a couple days and I'll go back home. But the early versions of COVID, it was a 10 to 12 day incubation period for like true infection. And what they found was around the 3rd or 4th week of January, we started seeing Bellevue, Washington and San Jose and all these weird big cities, but not port cities. And that's where infection usually starts.
Yeah, well, I don't know who brought that, whatever that was on the sub, but man. I mean, it was there was a window there where we were like on the line of we almost turned around.
Yeah.
Like, because it didn't really gain traction because you got to realize it does that sort of thing where it has to double and double and double, right? So that takes a few cycles to get there, right?
Right.
And when it got there, we were already like out for like 4 or 5 days. So we were a decent, and it was like we were far enough away that even if to come back, by the time we came back, somebody did the math and figured, well, everybody's going to have it by then.
Yeah.
Like by the time we get back, everybody's basically going to be better.
Yeah.
So, let's not do that, which meant that, we didn't do any drills. It was like just everybody stop doing everything. Just keep bare minimum.
Yeah.
Don't change anything, right? Don't make it so because everybody that was on watch was exhausted.
Yeah.
So it was like, don't make anybody do anything crazy or anything. Just, go in a straight line. This is where we're going.
Yep.
Don't change anything. And it got so bad that like at the peak, it was like the EXO was on the con with like an IV drip running. Because all the rest of the officers were like down, the captain was down. It was just like, and there was like bare minimum, everywhere. We basically went to like the minimum crew you could possibly have, like almost like we were in port. It was just like,
you got like
we don't need that watch.
The 7 healthy guys that are like, okay, we're not melting down. We're still pointing straight. Cool.
Yeah, and it was surprising. It was almost like we didn't get so bad that it was like out of a like a TNG episode where it's like, how the hell is Crusher running that much stuff? Like,
who brought the headset on board? Who's playing the game? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, who brought that damn thing? But like, we got to a point where there was probably like 3 people in the engine room basically doing what should be like 8 people.
Yeah.
And it was like, we can cover this. We can secure this watch. We can secure that watch. We're not going to do anything that, So we had like people taking like other people's logs even because that's really, if we weren't going to change anything, you just had to make sure the logs were taken.
Yeah.
And so like we had people kind of like, we had to like bend some rules really.
Yeah.
To do it. But it was either that or you just, what else are you going to do? There's just no way. There was not even enough time to nobody could fly more people out that quickly.
Right.
It was just 2/3 of the crew is just in bed.
But even if you fly people out, you're going to put them into into a
Yeah,
sick
you're
tank.
You just yes.
You're
Are you
just gonna
willing to get
perpetuate the issue. Right.
Yeah, they would be there for like maybe half a day, and then they would get sick,
Right.
and then they're down. So what are you going to do? Just keep throwing people at it? It's like it's some kind of, cannon fodder in World War II or something?
Right.
Like, you just can't do it. So we just kind of grinned and bared it,
Yeah.
and it was just weird. It's the longest I slept ever on a submarine,
Yeah.
which was like, I want to say like 24 hours straight.
Yeah. Jeez.
Like I got sick, and then all I remember was like Doc coming by and making sure I still had a pulse a couple of times. It's
Yeah.
like the only consciousness I had, and then he would be like, oh, "All right, you still have like you're still hot as hell," like
Right.
because he was running around like IR thermometer.
Yeah.
Like
still
checking people.
102. Okay.
Yeah, it was just like, okay, you still good? And it was like, yeah, and
Yeah.
he'd like, okay, and he'd just leave me alone, and like another 6 or 8 hours would pass, he'd come back,
Yep.
and it was such a weird vibe because like you'd have
Yeah.
it, and then you'd be down, but then when you woke up, it was like you just woke up from like a good night's sleep.
Yeah, I could use some tacos. Like,
Dude, it was like you'd wait,
Yeah.
and when you finally woke up, you're just like, what the hell just happened? You're just
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, let me go relieve whoever was dealing with, the skeleton crew. Let me go help or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah,
jeez.
it was crazy.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I ever told that. I might not have even ever told that story on the PC Pro podcast.
Well, cool. Thank you. That was fun.
Weird Navy memories. Yeah,
Yeah.
they come up at the weirdest times.
Yep.
So what else we got? Are we?
I think that's it.
Are we good?
I think that's a good show. Yeah.
I think we did a good show.
Yeah.
It was fun.
We usually promise 2 hours. We usually go 2:15. We're at 3 hours and 20 minutes now. So
Oh Jesus!
it's 9:20 here. It's midnight for you, sir.
Well, I don't care.
I know you don't.
As long as you're good.
Yeah.
I mean,
No, I
just hope we didn't bore the audience too much.
my graph is literally, like I said, from the very beginning. We went up
still
and
good.
about
They
15
gotta start.
minutes in,
They gotta
we
start leaving
flatlined,
now. Like,
and then we've
okay.
kind of done like this little thing where it's just like plus or minus 10,
All right.
and we've been holding there the whole time. So people have enjoyed it. So
Cool.
great show. Kraft says we pulled the tech poutine. Thanks, Cheese. That's George from Chips and Cheese. If you haven't met him.
Yes.
Yes.
Actually, George, I've talked about this. I've broached this a few times with Ian. I need to jump on. I need to talk with you guys at some point.
You need to get on a tech poutine. Yes.
Yeah, I need to get in on that at some point. Yeah.
We got to make that happen.
Yeah, I just mentioned it to Ian. I ran into Ian at it was like supercomputer something. He and I had lunch. And then of course, yeah, when Ian and I talk, it's a totally different, maybe you don't get to the point of Wendell take notes stuff, but we certainly talk about it. It goes pretty wide.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. But he's usually kind of got his reporter hat on while he's doing it. So
Also,
he's trying
yes.
to, yeah, which is cool.
Well,
He's
it's because
doing
you
it
work
right.
for the dark side now, and so he's going to get whatever he can out of you.
He's gonna get what? Yeah, that's true. Fair enough. Yeah. Fortunately, most of the time I can just deflect and just be like, "Look, I'm just here to test the SSDs.
Okay.
I'm just here to test the SSDs and make them quicker. That's it. I'm not, yeah. I'm not moving and shaking at an executive level or anything. I like to stay, keep my hands dirty, playing with the toys.
Yep. Stay on the tech bench.
Don't you want to promote me? Okay, as long as I still get to play with the stuff. Don't promote me to the level where I can't play with the stuff anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
That was me. I eventually landed in management, and man, that was I enjoyed the management. I was really, really good at the nuts and bolts of managing people and making sure everything got done. But at the same time, it's that's kind of the whole reason I started the YouTube channel is I took over management and I went, I don't get to play with anything anymore. They don't let me near any of the toys. But
I bet as a manager, you were probably the most approachable.
I absolutely was.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's I made it. I actually made it to a management level. I was a chief in the Navy at my 7-year point.
Yep.
Which is usually no small feat to get that high. It's E7 out of a total of E9. I made that at 7 years.
Yeah.
But I just stayed there. I didn't even go out of my way to try to advance further because I didn't want to be higher. I wanted to at least try to stay as close as I could to at least be able to, and as a chief on submarines, you could still get your hands dirty.
Right.
Because there was few enough people
Yeah.
in your group that it was like, look, crap needs to get done. I can't just be the boss all the time. I got to,
Can't just sit at my desk. Okay, 2 hours a day. I got to churn.
There is no desk.
Right.
there is no desk.
I can't just sit in my bunk.
Yes.
Yeah.
Everything. If there's a desk, it's shared. It's I didn't want to get any higher, and I just kind of coasted at that level, and just intentionally went out of my way to not. Go higher.
I was the manager who I would get calls from someone and go, I'm going to be 7 minutes late. And I went, okay.
Yeah,
and?
exactly. Yeah.
I hired you to do a job. Are you going to do that job today? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I don't need to know.
Yeah. Well, I would only need to know because I would just need to run interference with my boss if I needed to. So at least I was aware in case but you didn't have to deal with that much of a chain of command kind of thing where you were working, I'm sure.
The last number of years I did, but that's a story for another day. Micromanagement to the extreme of that's why I left. So
but props to you though for making it into the management, and I'm sure being
and surviving out the other side,
one of the good ones. But it's good that you left it, because honestly when you stay in that for too long, it's the spinectomy eventually happens.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Yes.
I spent almost 7 years, almost 8 years, excuse me, as the at least the department lead, if not the manager.
Right.
I think officially 6 years as the manager, 8 years in the position.
You got out at about the appropriate amount of time before, you eventually start forgetting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
forgetting that you're actually employing people and
yes.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, listen, you're doing good.
Yeah. I like to think so.
Yeah. Got your thing going on. It's paying the bills.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, cool.
Heck yeah.
This has been a fun show. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been cool. We put this off for too long. We've talked about it.
We did. Yeah. You reminded me of it just a couple of weeks ago, and as it turns out, one of my normal co-hosts says, "Hey, for the next 6 weeks, I'm doing T-ball with my kid every Wednesday, and it goes until 6:30." And I went, "Well, that's not going to work." And I went, "Hey, I got like 3 openings to fill. Cool. Let's get it filled."
So wait, you have just a normal co-host that's when you don't have guests?
I have a rotation of 3 of my friends in the area, and that's literally what it is. It's Rhett, who I actually employed for a couple of years to do editing and things like that for me. And then I have Steve and John, and they're 2 brothers. John runs a YouTube channel where he reviews beer. And then but Steve and John are both programmers by trade, and so they're not necessarily like tech hardware, but they are very tech adjacent, and can talk to about any subject that broaches them, and we all have very shared common interests, and so it always makes for some great conversation. But if any of them can't make it, then I love to bring in guests. I love to bring in, you and Ian.
Start doing the rounds.
Exactly. So,
Yeah, cool. Well, it was fun.
Yeah. We will definitely do this again.
Anybody in your chat or anybody on the Discord? I am on your Discord, so like weird storage questions, whatever, just at me.
Yeah. At Malventano. It's right above his name right there. Or right above his head. There it is. Yep.
There we go. Yeah.
I couldn't point to yours because yours is on the other side.
Can I swipe the L cars? Does it do anything? It doesn't do anything.
It's not touch sensitive, unfortunately.
Darn it.
I tried. Yeah, but
darn it.
Couldn't quite get there. Anyway, this has been episode 380 of Talking Heads. Join us every Wednesday night at 6 p.m. Pacific time for the latest in beer and tech news right here on YouTube. Do all the YouTube things, like button, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. We already kind of said where we can find you, and that's
buy a glass, buy a
good man.
Buy the things from the thing.
Click the button. Yeah,
which I need to do now because those are cool glasses.
These are very cool glasses.
And I have to come prepared, and for the next time you happen to bring me on the show, then I'll have the appropriate
We'll get you an appropriate glass. I also do stone
glass
coasters. So
you're gonna make me use your coaster too and not mix and match it and pull off the Gamers Nexus.
I mean, you could put a GN on this.
SSD
you could put my glass on a GN coaster.
It's out of the frame.
Yeah, I mean, either way.
Have to, because you gotta use an SSD coaster.
Yeah, I don't discriminate. Well, mine's a 2011 Xeon.
Well, that's okay.
So. I mean, we were just talking about all the PCI Express lanes we don't have anymore.
That's true. That would have been topic appropriate.
You know what's fun about this is there's actually 2011 pads on here. I actually modeled this, and each of them are individually cut.
You nerd.
Yes.
I say this with the most respect possible.
I know that comes from a place of endearment. So yes.
You freaking nerd.
It's modeled identically to a 2011.
That's freaking awesome.
So yeah, craftcomputing.store. That's where you can find all those goodies. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you again, Alan. And as always, we'll see you next week. Cheers, everyone.